What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 647. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, how are things over in the Rocky Mountains?
Excellent. You know, sun is shining. It's nice and summery here, and really couldn't be better.
You know, I got to ask you, your former team, the Golden State Warriors, are looking ready to dispatch your current team, the Denver Nuggets. Is this conflicting for you? Do you care?
It's a stretch to say that they are my former team or the Nuggets are my current team. my allegiances don't run particularly deep. I will say I've gone to see both the teams in person a number of times, and I enjoy watching the games, but I'm not super invested.
Dude, you grew up in Oakland, man. Like, you have to be a Warriors fan. I mean, they don't play there now, but they played there like your whole childhood.
Well, actually, what's really weird is I didn't grow up watching or caring about basketball at all, but my dad now is super into the Warriors. He watches every single game. See? So like he discovered that, you know, kind of later. And
you should honor your elders by rooting for, and you should, by the way, stick with the Warriors because they're doing well. All right, we've got a great show lined up today. This is the Streets of New Capenna Rare and Mythic Rare show. This is going to be a banger. Anytime they give us a 3-color set, the rares are going to be something else, and they're going to be castable too. Bunch of triple colored rares to go over today, of course, in addition to double and single color as well, and even I think a 5-color one. So we're going to cover every single one of those in the show today, get you ready for when the set comes out online and any events that you're going to do coming up. Before we do, let's talk about our sponsors. First, channelfireball.com. Make sure you check them out for Streets of New Capenna. If you want to get yourself ordered up, pre-ordered on Streets of New Capenna, if you want some singles or sealed products or anything like that, you can go over to channelfireball.com and order it. The pre-order process is really great. It kind of takes the pressure off. You just order what you want, and then the day that they're able to ship it to you, it will be in the mail. CFP is very good about shipping, and of course, with their partners in the CFP marketplace as well, they oversee all of that. So you can rest assured that you're going to get your product just as soon as you can, and whether that's singled or sealed product. If you do end up getting anything over at CFP, if you use the affiliate code LR, you just type in LR into the box at the end of checkout there. It'll let them know that we sent you over, and we do appreciate it. The show's also brought to you by FTX. That's a place to buy, sell, trade, and manage your digital assets. Things like cryptocurrencies, things like that. FTX is an exchange. They're not a cryptocurrency themselves. They are a place to go to buy, sell, and trade them, manage them, that kind of thing, track them, etc. And if you're inside the US, it's ftx.us. Outside the United States, it's ftx.com. And you can partake in that version of the economy. There's a whole lot going on in that blockchain space. If you're curious about it, FTX is the place to go. I'll remind you that it is a form of investment, which of course carries risk. So you're going to make sure that you consult an investment professional before you do investing of any kind. But when you're ready, ftx.com outside the US, ftx.us within. And of course, the show's brought to you by you via the Patreon. Thank you so much for your support over on the Patreon. It really does mean the world to us. It's kind of the bedrock of the show for Luis and I, and we really do appreciate it. If you do sign up, you get a thank you card and sticker in the mail, no matter what level you're at. And if you appreciate what we're doing here, we would appreciate you checking out the Patreon. Thanks so much for everybody over there. Luis, we're going to go over every single rare and mythic rare, and at the end of that, we're going to give each of them a grade.
So the way the grading scale works, it's an A through F scale with 2 subgrades. And given that today is the rare and mythic rare set review, we're going to end up with more A's and more F's than you would in the common uncommon review. The A's are bombs, game winners, cards that are good in many situations, and especially when behind. So these are the best cards in the set. Cards like the Wandering Emperor. Mm-hmm. B's are cards that actively pull you towards their colors, or in this case, their family or faction. These are cards that are like solid removals, efficient creatures, just cards that are above average. So cards like Beside You, Reaches Skyward, Colossal Sky Turtle, Replication Specialist. C's are playable. The pawns are limited. They're pretty interchangeable. You don't feel particularly good or bad when you run them. They're just cards you got to run in your deck. Cards like Fang of Shigeki and Network Disruptor. D's are sometimes playable, but you prefer not to run them. They're the cards that you feel kind of bad when you have in your deck. Once your deck has 5 or 6 of these, something probably went wrong in draft. Cards like Aki Ronin or Jukai Trainee. And F's are just the straight up unplayable cards, incredibly narrow cards that cost 10 mana. It's cards like Mirror Box, Bronze Cudgels. And then the subgrades are sideboard, cards that you would side in, but you wouldn't generally play in the main deck. Cards like Lucky Offering or Explosive Entry. Don't expect to see a many, if any, sideboard cards in the Rare and Mythic review. That typically is not where they live. On the other hand, build-arounds are. Build-arounds are cards that on their own don't necessarily do much of anything or literally anything. But when you build around them, they can be all-stars. Cards like Brilliant Restoration and Oni Cult Anvil.
That's right. And as he said, these are going to be kind of polarized as we go. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with Brokers this time, which is otherwise known as Bant. And our first card up is Broker's Ascendancy. This is part of a cycle, so each of the families will have its own ascendancy. They all cost the same, but they do very different things. So the cost is 1 mana of each color from that family, in this case, green, white, blue. It's an enchantment. They're all rare. And this one says, and by the way, we're going to start off real big here with Broker's Ascendancy. At the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control and a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control.
Yeah, starting off strong here. Broker's Ascendancy is an A. And one thing to get out of the way while we talk about all these 3-color cards is this is a 3-color set, so we're not really going to penalize cards for casting 3 different colors or really even mention it from here on out.
That's right.
Cards that cost 3 colors are kind of par for the course here. Like, yes, it is stronger to be monocolor and stronger to be 2-color than 3-color, but when you look at a card like Broker's Ascendancy, you don't think, oh, how am I going to stretch my mana base for this? You kind of think, this is what this is going on in the set. This is a valid path to go down.
That's right. And I think a good way to frame it is just, if it is a full 3-color card, you won't necessarily have that mana on turn 3 every time. So think of it as it may push you back a little, but you will be able to cast it. Where in a normal set, we would be frowning on these and going, is it really worth splashing? So Broker's Ascendancy, you gave it an A. I also give it an A. The setup cost on these Ascendancies can be quite high. This one is, you have creatures in your deck. I mean,
literally all you need for this to be busted is to have 2 creatures in play.
That's right. And it doesn't even matter what they are. So A for Broker's Ascendancy. We'll find, though, as we look at the other Ascendancies, they're not all so easy to set up. Next is Endless Detour. Has the same mana cost, and it's an instant at rare. And it says, the owner of target spell, non-land permanent, or card in a graveyard puts it on the top or bottom of their library.
So I'm going to immediately go back on what I said. The mana cost here actually is kind of relevant because this is a card that you will certainly be good in the late game, but you do kind of feel it a little if you're missing the 3rd color for a while on this one. This is a card you want at the right time. Part of the strength of this card is having it when you need it. That being said, it's so flexible that you'll always play it and be pretty happy with it. And largely, you're going to use the first 2 modes. Though note that it's a card in anyone's graveyard. You can put a card from your graveyard on top of your library. Yep. So if you've got a busted card in your graveyard, this is card disadvantage. You're skipping your draw step. But Endless Detour still has that additional value. And really just bouncing their thing or their spell is really strong. So I would give a B to Endless Detour. Solid card.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the quick litmus test on should I put a card from my graveyard on top of my library is, if I were to draw that card and give up anything else with Endless Detour, would it, drastically significantly improve my chances to win the game? And if the answer is yes, then do it. It's just a lot of times you kind of would rather have a draw step plus an Endless Detour to, say, get rid of one of their creatures. Next is Rigo's Streetwise Mentor. This one has a very strange mana cost. So it costs white. And then you can either pay a green and a white in addition to that, as well as a blue and a white in addition to that. So you could pay triple white for this, for example, or you could pay green, white, white, or green, white, blue, or blue, white, white. Very strange, but it's always 3 mana, kind of white-centric. It's a 2/2 legendary cat citizen at rare, and Rigo Streetwise Mentor enters a battlefield with a shield counter on it. You'll remember that from the last episode. Whenever you attack a player or planeswalker with 1 or more creatures with power 1 or less, draw a card.
So this cycle of cards, the mana cost is relevant because you can actually play this outside of just the Brokers family. You can play this in Brokers because it costs green, white, blue, but really any deck that's green, white, or white, blue could be interested, which opens the door to Obscura and Cabaretti as the other 2 families. Technically, you can play in any white deck, but you're really not going to play a triple white card in a situation where you can't actually play the other colors, which isn't very likely anyway.
That's right.
So as for the card, Rigo's really strong. a 2/2 with shield that they really need to get rid of that you're probably not putting into combat, because this doesn't need to attack. It just needs to see one of your citizens attack or any other one power creature. They're going to be forced to probably use 2 removal spells on this. Otherwise, you get to basically trade a 1/1 for a card every turn. And that's assuming they get to like eat it for free. Sometimes they're not even going to be able to do that. Like you've got a 1/1 flyer or something.
Or a fish token.
Fantastic. So I would give an A- to Rigo. This card is super dangerous for your opponent and really hard to remove. I really like that combination.
Yeah, I would give Rigo a B+. I'm just a little lower because his stats are, very mediocre and can be a relatively difficult card to get into play depending on what mana cost you choose, but same ballpark.
I mean, it's not even bad stats, though. You can play this turn 3. They can't attack their 2/2 into this, or you're up a card.
Yeah,
right?
that is true. So how good is a 3-mana 2/2 with the shield counter on it?
Pretty good.
It's actually pretty good. No, you're right. Okay. Yeah, we'll go A- on Rigo. That is true. And remember, I got to do the pre-release, and shield counters are really, really annoying. Like they play like a card. Like you're like, crap.
My sense of it is that a shield counter is about 80% of a card.
Yeah.
Maybe more.
That was my sense too. It's really annoying. All right. Next is a mythic rare. And this is also part of a cycle. This is like the family boss, right? This is like the top dog. This one's called Falco Spara Pact Weaver, and it costs only 4 mana, so 1 and then green, white, blue, for a 3/3 legendary bird demon with flying and trample. So 4 mana, 3/3 flying trample. Pretty good. That's a good start. But there's a lot of other text. Falco Spara enters a battlefield with a shield counter on it. So now we're fully in business. And you may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may cast spells from the top of your library by removing a counter from a creature you control in addition to paying their other costs. So obviously there's a built-in counter here on Falco, so you can cash in the shield counter to cast a spell from the top of your library. But if you have other things with +1/+1 counters or other shield counters or anything like that, you could remove one of those and then pay the cost for the spell and be able to cast it from your library, which is basically like drawing a card. It is worth noting that it does say cast a spell, not play a card. So that means that you can't play lands by doing this. But this card's a house. I mean, you're already getting spotted a 3/3 flying trample shield for only 4. And then on top of it, you have the ability to leverage some card advantage off of this thing too.
Yeah, I really don't like this card because it was the first card I read. And then it made me think that the 3/1 angel had to remove a shield counter to draw a card.
Oh.
And it just I got one of those like mind worms. So
right.
That's why I got that wrong last review. I was like, I had already been like kind of like pre like inceptioned, but I can't really hold that against Falco Spara. Obviously, this card's a fantastic bomb.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I mean, it's one of those cards that would get in the A range if you took like random lines of text off it.
Yeah, it's true.
Which is a really good sign. So
yeah,
yes, this card is an A. I mean, there's not really much else to say. Like it's just really strong by itself and gets better if you work around it.
I love it. I also like the strategic implications of, do I remove the counter to play the card, right? Like oftentimes that'll be yes, sometimes it won't. Next is called Soul of Emancipation. This one costs 7 mana. It's 4 green, white, blue for a 5/7 avatar at rare. And when it enters a battlefield, you destroy up to 3 other target non-land permanents. For each of those permanents, its controller creates a 3/3 white angel creature token with flying.
So this is basically a Terastodon kind of remix.
Yeah.
So this itself doesn't fly. Might be an easy mistake to make. It kind of looks like it flies and it makes flyers. What you're mostly going to do with this is play it as a 5/7 and hopefully blow up like one of your things to make a 3/3 angel. You're not that often going to want to kill their stuff unless it's much better, because it can kill creatures, but they have to be much better than a 3/3 flyer for you to want to do that, because ideally you just sacrifice 3 of your own things. Also, the joke is shield counters protect them from being destroyed. So you can target your things with shield counters on this and you'll keep the creature and get a 3/3.
Yeah. And I mean, 3/3 flying angels, that's better than most cards that you'll have on the battlefield in limited, most creatures and certainly non-land permanents and stuff that are just not doing that much. You'll usually be able to upgrade. I mean, look really closely at each of your creatures and ask yourself, would a 3/3 flying angel actually be better here? And all of a sudden You can put 9 power, 9 toughness in the air to go with your 5/7 on the ground. This is a game ender for sure. You probably need to ramp into it. It does cost 7 mana, but my inclination is that you will most likely kill their best thing and give them 1 angel, give yourself 2 angels and have the 5/7. And that really lines you up beautifully. It's also worth noting, I don't know how often it'll come up, but 5/7 is a weird stat line, but it actually matches up well against like 2 angels, for example. So, if you just downgrade, let's say, or whatever, they're board into 2/2/2 flying angels and you have a 5/7, you can still smash. So
3/3 angels, you said 2/2. I know you meant 3/3.
Yeah, 3/3. The other thing that we should note here, it is up to, and so you can really have full flexibility here on, like, you can do only 1 thing or 2 things, one of theirs, one of yours, or 3 things on your side or 3 things on their side if it comes down to it. So really make sure that you take your time and don't just snap off picking 3 things every time. There's going to be a lot of times when it's not correct to do so.
I would overall give this a B. I think that, yes, there's going to be games where this really has a huge impact. It's an impactful card, but it does cost 7 mana. And really, targeting their stuff isn't that good. And if you don't have stuff to target, this isn't that impressive. So it's got a little bit more situational aspect to it than I like on my 7 mana game enders.
Yeah, I'd give it a B+ for Soul of Emancipation. I think that the power level's there, but I do believe that you're going to have to put cards into your deck that ramp, to make sure that you can cast this thing in a timely fashion. Are we going to do this one now? When do we want to do this one?
Yeah, let's just do it now.
Okay. There's a card called Meeting of the 5, and it's a 5-color gold card. So we're just going to, it shows up on every page that we have, so we're just going to get rid of it here. So this card is a mythic rare sorcery. It is 3 and Wooburg, so white, blue, black, red, green. So total of 8 mana. For a sorcery, it says exile the top 10 cards of your library. You may cast spells with exactly 3 colors from among them this turn, and then you add white, white, blue, blue, black, black, red, red, green, green, and spend this mana to cast only spells with exactly 3 colors.
Well, like I just said about my game-ending bombs, I want them to be reliable if possible, and this is a very hard casting cost. 8 mana total plus 1 of each color is just a really rough casting cost, and this could just do nothing. It could do nothing. I would give Meeting of the 5 an F.
So as usual, you're going to be late to the meeting. Is that
Yeah.
Me too. Let's move on to Obscura. First card up is Obscura Ascendancy. So this is, again, the enchantment. It costs white, black, blue. And this one says, whenever you cast a spell, if its mana value is equal to 1 plus the number of soul counters on Obscura Ascendancy, put a soul counter on Obscura Ascendancy and then create a 2/2 white spirit creature token with flying. And as long as there are 5 or more soul counters on it, spirits you control get +3/+3. So this card's tough to get going. It comes in with 0 soul counters, right? So it has nothing. And you have to cast a spell that costs exactly 1 + 0. So you need to cast a 1-drop to get Obscura Ascendancy going. And in order for you to get the next 2/2 flyer out of the deal, you have to cast a 2-mana spell. So what are the tripping points on this? Really 1, right? Like getting that first token on its counters on it's really the hard part.
Well, it's both that and the fact that you need to have it in the right sequence. So imagine a world where you cast this and you even have the 1-drop. You get your spirit. You're like, yes. And then your other card in hand is a 3-mana card. And you're like, okay, if I play this card, then if I draw a 2-mana card, I can't progress. But if I don't play my card, I'm just not playing my card. Am I going to wait around for this? Look, I love the dogs playing poker vibe of the art. It's really cool. But I think this card's an F. I think it's way too situational. It needs the 1-drop to get kickstarted, and it needs to go in order. This is going to be the card for sure that during the Sunset Show, one of us is going to have a story about how their opponent played this and then curved out with it. Yes. They played this, the next turn they played a 1 and a 2-drop, then they played a 3-drop, then a 4 and a 5, and you lose really badly to 5/5/5 flyers, obviously. But I would say way too often this is going to be a blank piece of cardboard or one that maybe at best makes 1/2/2 before you die.
And what I really want to hammer home here is everything that you said about the setup cost is real. And that's not factoring in that you need to get 3 distinct colors of mana together, which we'll be able to do, but isn't necessarily a given. And then you need to cast this spell, which does absolutely nothing. Right? Like your triple color gold card, go. So your opponent's like, cool, play something relevant, smash you, and then you need to meet the requirements that Luis set out. The setup cost is too high for this card. I like F for Obscura Ascendancy. Next is the boss, I guess you would call it, Raffine Scheming Seer. And once again, this is cheap. This is only 3 mana, so white, blue, black for a 1/4 flying with Ward 1, and it's a Sphinx Demon. And whenever you attack, target attacking creature connives X, where X is the number of attacking creatures. And this says draw X cards, then discard X cards, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature for each non-land card discarded this way.
I'm a little weirded out by the presence of Ward in a set with Shield, though I get that.
That is weird.
It's because this is the Obscura card. They wanted to give it protection, and they couldn't give it Shield because that's a mechanic from Brokers.
I see.
But it's okay on one Mythic. It is just a little funny. In any case,
is this card
this card's amazing.
Is it amazing? Is it?
This card's incredible. It's one of the best cards in the set. So
target attacking. I see. You don't have to attack with it. Okay, gotcha.
No, imagine you cast any 2-drop. You play this on 3 and attack connive. Now you're attacking with a 3/3
or a 4/4.
Or potentially a 4/4. I mean, and then if you attack with 3 creatures, you're drawing 3 cards, and you're individually. So it's not. So yeah, you're drawing 3 cards and then discarding. You're getting massive amounts of counters and card filtering, and a 1/4 flying ward for 3 mana is also just really good.
Okay, so you attack. So let's say if you attack with 2 creatures, one of them gets to connive 2.
Yeah, which is actually the way you want it, which isn't 1, then 1, 1, then 1. It's 2 at once. So you get the max. So connive 3, it's not like it's kind of like the difference. Scry 1 3 times is worse than Scry 3 because you get all the information at once. So getting to connive 3 means you draw 3 cards. Pretty easy to figure out some non-lands to discard at that point.
Right.
And so even if this didn't give counters, it would be a pretty efficient way to get through your deck. The fact that it gives +1/+1 counters means you're getting a lot of board presence out of this at basically no cost.
But the thing I don't like about it, though, is the setup. How often are you going to be able to just... I mean, look, if you're in a situation where you just have great attacks with multiple creatures, okay, fine. I mean, that doesn't happen that often, right? Like, usually there's blockers. Usually they kill your stuff, whatever. This feels to me more like I'm going to be able to attack with 1 creature fairly reliably and get connive 1, which is pretty strong. But I mean,
this card would be an A if it was limited to just 1 creature.
You think so?
A 1/4 flying that's hard to kill because it has ward that can even pump itself by attacking. Because
that's true. This
thing's a free attack. It's a 1/4 flyer. Nothing's ever killing it.
That's true.
If you have a 2/2 in this, you attack with both. Target the 2/2. Now it's a 4/4 and you have a 1/4 flyer.
Okay, yeah.
Or you just start stacking counters on this, and it works the turn you play it.
That's true. Yeah,
this card is busted.
No, you're right. That's amazing. That is fantastic. The thing that you just pointed out that I wasn't factoring in is since Raffine as a 1/4 flyer for 3 mana is going to be able to attack multiple times, it kind of adds a free attacker, even in addition to, like you said, something down on the ground or whatever. That's sweet. Yeah. The card's really cool. I mean, I really like the card. I struggled a little there to figure out the power, but you've convinced me that it's very, very strong.
No, it's a weird looking card for sure, but it's got a lot of disparate parts. But I think the card is amazing.
You're churning through your library. That's really powerful. I
mean, I would give this an A+, and my reasoning is this is busted on turn 3, especially if you have a 2-drop. Your opponent could almost never win if you go 2-drop, play this attack. Now I have a 3/3 attacking. They can't block.
Next turn, attack getting smaller. 2. Yeah, that's insane.
But then also, if you top deck it late game, you play this and attack with 3 creatures to make your fish token a 4/4, or just in the late game attacking with 3 creatures to draw 3 and then discard 3 is really good.
And just get the best card. It takes you out of flood. All right, yeah, I like A for Raffine Scheming Seer. You like A+.
Yeah, next a card that's 3 mana and wins you the game on 3 a lot of the time, or is really, really effective on 7 or 8 mana. That's hard to replicate.
Insanely good. Yeah. Also, the Ward 1 is probably going to be extremely annoying because of how urgent people will feel to kill this. Toulouse Clever Conductor is next. This one is part of that cycle. So you have to pay blue mana, and then you can accompany that with a white, a black, or more blue mana. So as you see fit. It is a 3/1 legendary human rogue at rare. And when it enters the battlefield, it connives. And then whenever you discard one or more cards, exile them from your graveyard. And when Toulouse dies, put the cards exiled with it into its owner's hand. Wow.
Yeah.
And you get a connive just straight away.
Connive is really strong by itself because, again, it gives you that +1/+1 counter. But the fact that Toulouse gets you a rebate on it is just absurd. So when you play this, it's already a 2-for-1, right? Because you play this, you draw a card, you discard a card, and then when you dies, you get the card you discarded back, which is less good than drawing a card because presumably you discarded the weaker of the two cards. Mm-hmm. But that's not even always true with connive. Sometimes you might want the +1/+1 counter, also, and have it come into play as a 4/2. And then when you have other connive stuff going on, this just keeps stacking up the value. So I would give Toulouse an A-. I think Toulouse is a really easy way to get card advantage without really sacrificing for board presence because you're getting a 3/1 or a 4/2 out of the deal.
Are you worried about the body being a 3/1 or maybe a 4/2? Neither of those are very good. They will be trading off for much lesser things.
Yeah, so that is true, but let's say you trade this for a 3-drop and then you draw a card off it, or a 2-drop rather, and then you draw a card off it, you still got an advantage there.
You did. I wouldn't put it quite in the A range for that transaction. I would have it in the BB plus range for that. But I suppose it does have a higher upside than that, right?
Yeah, it stacks up your other connive cards, so it can draw you maybe 2-3 cards over the course of the game when you cash it in. But then also, as a blocker, it can trade up just fine. A 3/1 or a 4/2 do block pretty well. So I think B+ or A- are fine for Toulouse. I think the card is quite strong.
I like A- for Toulouse. You could use it as an enchantment and just connive away and get a bunch of value. Void Rend is next. This one is white, blue, black for an instant that cannot be countered. It's a rare, and it destroys a non-land permanent. It's pretty strong.
Yeah. Strong removal. The can't be counter text is a lot more relevant for constructed. Obviously, you're never going to cut this card from your deck. You're going to take it early. It's just a good card. But
is it a B?
It's just a B. When you look at the other cards like Toulouse or any of these other cards that get you like measurable advantages, Void Rend is a 1-for-1. So
yes,
it does cut through shield counters. So that
it just knocks one off though, right? It cuts through ward.
It cuts through ward, right. Not shield counters. Yeah,
but shield counters,
it doesn't
just
counter it.
Ones for ones. Yeah, So I would say B for Void. I mean, you always like to have a catch-all answer, but that's not the type of card that just wins you the game.
Yeah, I like B for Void Rend as well.
Next card's a little better. This was our preview card, Obscura Interceptor. So it's 1 white, blue, black for a 3/1 flash lifelink Cephalid Wizard at rare. And it says when it enters a battlefield, it connives. And when it connives this way, return up to 1 target spell to its owner's hand. So you get a connive on a flash 3/1 lifelink, which is already great because it can, block and trade or become a 4/2 and smash back or whatever. But you also get this massive tempo swing of bouncing their spell back to their hand.
Yeah, really strong. I mean, a 3/1 lifelink that sometimes is going to be a 4/2 lifelink, and then it gets you that tempo back. So I would give A- on Obscura Interceptor. These cards just don't mess around. They're really strong.
Yeah, in the PPR, I chose Obscura, and I got lucky and opened one of these. And you can watch my match against Kenji. The card was just obscene. Okay, so that moves us to the Maestros, and we'll start with the Maestros Ascendancy. So this one, again, is blue, black, red for an enchantment. It says, once during each of your turns, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard by sacrificing a creature in addition to paying its other costs. If a spell cast this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead.
So it lets you trade creatures for spells, which is a powerful ability, especially if you're making decently cheap creatures or tokens or what have you. Mm-hmm. In the color trio, the family where these are themes that are kind of supported, right? There's ways to enable this. That said, it is really situational, where you have to not only have spells in your graveyard but also creatures. So you're trying to construct this deck that has a good amount of spells but also has creatures you don't mind sacrificing and that you kind of get at the right pace. So I'm not in love with Maestro's Ascendancy. I would give it a build around. It's clearly a build around card. I think it's like a build around B, where if all the pieces come together, I can imagine, you play this and you cast Strangle, right? The sorcery for a red that deals 3 by sacking a token, and you're like, wow, you sack a fish token or whatever, and you feel pretty good about that. But there's a lot of decks that are just not even going to look at this card. They're like, well, of course I'm not running that card.
Yeah, I think I would give it a little lower. I think I'd give it like a build around C+. Like the fact that you have to spend a card here and then also sacrifice onboard presence to get back your spells. Like what spell? Better be
you
a
also have
heck
to pay
of a
mana.
spell. And you have to pay all the mana for it. I am not impressed. This is why we were so blown away by the Broker's Ascendancy, because the other ones are like this, where you're like, I have to do what? The other one was like, yeah, you have to have 2 creatures.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything.
Next is Maestro's Diabolist, which is the same cost, blue, black, red. For a 1/4 vampire warrior, this is rare. It has both death touch and haste. I like a 1/4 death toucher. That is a pain. Whenever it attacks, if you don't control a devil token, create a tapped and attacking 1/1 red devil creature token with, when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. That is really annoying. Oh my God.
1/4 is just big enough that it's going to be kind of a pain for them to try to kill this. I will say that a 1/4 death touch gets double blocked by 2/2s fairly effectively, because even with death touch, you can only kill one of the 2.
Good point. True.
But it's still really good. And a devil token, I mean, is not just a 1/1. The fact that it deals 1 means there's very few boards where that devil token just gets eaten for free.
Right.
It's either going to finish off the card that blocked it or kill their X1 or whatever it is. So I like these 3-color cards a lot. This gives you value right away. If you play this into a board where they can't immediately kill it, then you're looking at it like, I think, an A- here. It's just a really strong card.
I think so too. I also like the fact that it comes down later. It still has an effect on the game. It's not like it's a blank later. I'd give Maestro's Diabolist a B+. It might be an A-. I'd have to play with it. Next is Evelyn the Covetous, and this is actually not this is like, what are these like the second in commands?
Lieutenants maybe?
Or whatever. Yeah. So this one costs 2 and a black, and then you can either play black, blue, black, or black, red in addition to it. So 5 mana total, and it's a legendary vampire rogue that's a 2/5 with flash. That is a very weird stat line for Maestros. Whenever Evelyn the Covetous or another vampire enters a battlefield under your control, exile the top card of each player's library with a collection counter on it. Once each turn, you may play a card from exile with a collection counter on it if it was exiled by an ability you controlled, and you may spend mana as though it were any color to cast it. Okay. This is from both players?
Yeah, so basically every time that you play a vampire, you get the option to play both cards. Evelyn has to be around.
Okay.
So her ability is what's giving you the option to play these cards, but she also lets you play 1 per turn. So she's got multiple restrictions. She has to be in play and it's 1 per turn, but it does mean every time a vampire comes into play, you effectively draw 2 cards, because it's also play. So you can play a land off it, though it still uses up like your 1 card turn. Mm-hmm. And scanning through, there are 2 vampires at common in black.
Okay.
So that helps.
And she's a vampire, right? So that's the joke here.
But she would be really strong even if there were no other vampires.
Yeah.
Like she's already kind of doing the thing you want her to do.
Especially with the play pattern of end step flash in Evelyn, that's going to limit your opponent's ability to kill Evelyn, because A, any sorcery speed answers won't be on the table, and B, people tap out. They tap their mana. And so then you get to take a look at those 2 cards. Now go to your turn. You can play one of them straight away. So if it's a land, you could just play it. And if it's a spell, you could play it too. Like play the good one before Evelyn dies or whatever. And then even then, if you can either make it to your opponent's turn, if it's an instant, or back to your turn, you can play the other card too. That's great.
2/5 flash can often eat a card right away.
Definitely. And that's the thing I was going to bring up, Luis, is it would be tempting to end step Evelyn to make sure that you get your 2 cards and give yourself the best chance of casting them. But I would be greedy. If they attacked with a 2/2, I would 100% not 100%, but I would be very inclined to snap off casting Evelyn, blocking, and say, sure, if you kill it, fine. But, if you don't, I'm going to get these extra cards anyway. And 2/5 body is just going to sit here and block you and slow you down. That's a great card. Really cool design, too.
Marshall the Covetous.
Yeah, I am covetous of the top cards of my library and their library, I'll tell you that. Does it get into the A range for me? I don't know. B+ for Evelyn the Covetous?
Yeah, I like
A- maybe?
Something like B+ A- for Evelyn.
It's right there.
I mean, I still think, as much as we're giving these grades out a lot, I think this might be an A- because imagine it's like a 2/5 flash Muldrifter without any other vampires.
Yeah, totally. Also, the casting cost is easier to cast than it looks. You can, if you're in this color trio, like you don't even need to find both blue and red. You could find one or the other and supplement them with black and get this card on the battlefield. Okay, a will A- for Evelyn the Covetous. Next is Hostile Takeover. This one is 2 blue, black, red for a sorcery. So 5 mana, rare, and up to 1 target creature has base power and toughness 1/1 until end of turn. All right, so pick your opponent's best creature and make it a 1/1. Up to 1 other target creature has base power and toughness 4/4 until end of turn. So pick your smaller size creature that you'd like to save, make it a 4/4. Then Hostile Takeover deals 3 damage to each creature. So now their biggest thing dies and your thing that was going to die to this doesn't. And you can probably smash them for a bunch too.
Yeah, I mean,
dang.
This is on the short list for best cards in the set because it's a wrath in quotes. I mean, and I use quotes intentionally because your best, the creature you want to survive always survives. Often other creatures will survive because 3 damage isn't necessarily going to happen. And it makes it so their best creature always dies.
Yep.
I mean,
that's the difference, right? When we play these sweepers that do 2 damage or 3 damage to everything, they always have the 1 card left over that you're like, but it didn't kill that. That's what I needed to get rid of.
Yeah, and this always kills it. And it lets you, this is a wrath that lets you just play all your stuff out. Like, yes, at some point you're going to get to the point where if you play too many small creatures, you're going to lose a bunch of them. But for the most part, you're going to be able to work this so this and maybe one of your things dies and like all their stuff dies.
Yeah. Should I have splashed this in my pre-release deck? I had it and I decided not to, but
probably this card I think is an A+. Like if this isn't an A+, I don't really know what is. Like you cast this card and again, their best creature always dies. Your best creature always lives. Often your second best creature also lives. Like, it's really just not hard to set this up so that you just get an immense boon out of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I like A for Hostile Takeover. It might even be an A+. Last card for Maestros is the boss. It is Lord Xander, the Collector. This one costs a lot. The other ones we've seen have been quite a bit cheaper. This one's 7 mana, so 4 blue, black, red for a 6/6 legendary vampire demon noble at Mythic. When Lord Xander enters the battlefield, target opponent discards half the cards in their hand, rounded down. What does that mean again, rounded down?
Means if they have 5 cards, they discard 2.
They discard 2. Okay.
So rounded down is bad for you. You want rounding up because it's saying the bad thing.
Whenever Lord Xander attacks, defending player mills half of their library, rounded down. And when Lord Xander dies, target opponent sacrifices half the non-land permanents they control, rounded down. That's a lot. So let's break it down. Them discarding half their hand rounded down is pretty good, but this is on a 7-drop, right? So you're probably getting like a card out of it most of the time. Can you mill somebody out with this?
I mean, yes, you can put them in a position where they're going to get milled pretty quickly.
Okay.
But I don't think the mill part is that exciting.
I don't think so either. In fact, and it does potentially help them until they do die, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, what I think you're mostly going to end up with the mill part is like, if you've attacked them with a 6/6 enough times, they're probably going to lose. You know, I don't need the mill part to like make that happen a little bit more often.
Now, the last one's nice, though, because this is a 6/6, so they are going to have to kill it at some point. They can't just take damage or chump it all day. And then your opponent's going to lose half of their non-land permanents rounded down. And, you know, by the time this comes down, that could be a pretty nice little chunk.
Yeah, the sacrifice part, I think, is the best part of this card. Because often you're gonna kill one or two of their permanents. Plus, you had the 6/6 that was doing a lot of work to begin with. But the discard's also good. You'll often get a card out of this, maybe two, but mostly one card, I think.
Because if they have 3, it's 1, right?
Yes, if they have 3, they're discarding 1 card, and it's a 7-mana spell. So at the time you make them discard, like how many, how much do they really have, right?
Exactly. But if we add that up, if we get, let's say, a card on average out of the beginning, we ignore the mill part. Let's just say that doesn't end up being a huge thing. And they end up having to sacrifice 1 or 2 cards. They had to use a card to deal with Xander. I mean, we are maybe talking 2. About, we're creeping up into the 3 to 4 for 1 territory here. It's kind of in a roundabout way, but it's there. I can't imagine being happy that my opponent cast this card. And the mill part is interesting because if it's a drawn out game, they can't afford to just chump it a few times and find an answer later, try to race or whatever. Like that mill thing actually will add up. So I like Lord Xander. I don't love it. But I really like it. I think that, in kind of roundabout way of grinding, Lord Xander's going to get the job done there, and it's going to be a real pain for any slow matchup.
Yeah, this puts it around the B range for me.
Me too. B plus. I mean, it is a card advantage engine, but like if I'm fast, I'm like, yeah, sure. You got to, it's a 7-mana 6/6. Like, doesn't do that much otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, it's when I play a 7-mana spell, I expect it to be pretty effective, and this is, above average effectiveness for it for sure, but there's plenty of situations where you look at this and it's just not going to be, the end of the world for them.
Let's move on to the Riveteers. What do you make of the artwork on Riveteers Ascendancy? This is a riff off of a photograph.
A really classic one, yeah.
A really cool photograph, and it's interesting because if you look at the other cards, like I'm looking at the sheet that we look at here, there's fire breathing dragon things or lizards or whatever everywhere. There's literally a dragon. There's this huge thing. And then there's this kind of play on reality. It doesn't fit, but like, does it work for you? I'm just curious if you like that kind of stuff.
It does there's a Viashino there and like a little devil there. So like they have the magic touches. I kind of like it. I think the callback right? to a bit of Americana. The one thing is for people who don't recognize that picture, which is I think more often people who aren't from the US or people who are younger, I don't know how much impact it holds.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, Riveteer's Ascendancy is black, green, red for an enchantment. It says, whenever you sacrifice a creature, you may return target creature card with lesser mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped, and you can do this only once each turn.
The more I see these other ascendancies,
Brokers is so stupid.
So you've got Brokers, right, which is just no work, excellent. You've got Obscura, which is really weird, a lot of work, doesn't work. And then you have like Maestros and Riveteers that are both like, well, if you do the work, you get the reward in a kind of like reasonable way that isn't that exciting. So
right, like the reward here. So here's what's trying to happen, right?
Right.
You play a 2-mana creature, it dies. You trade it off, whatever, it's in the graveyard. Okay, great. Then you play Blitz creature a little bit later. You get your value off of your Blitz creature. You have to sacrifice it, triggers the Ascendancy. You get back your 2-drop. Sure. Like, how many things would I need to get back that cost, say, 2 or 3 mana? Because that's probably your realistic range. Before I'm happy having played Riveteer's Ascendancy, paid the mana, used a card, put it onto the battlefield. I mean, it's a 2, I'm like, okay, right? Like, I guess I got some value out of this, but the third one's the one where I'm like, okay, we're kind of doing it. Like I'm going off. That's never going to happen.
I'd have too. You need to get 3 things back, because part of that you might think, well, isn't a 2-for-1 good? Well, you spent 3 mana on a card that did nothing when you played it.
Right.
And you also have to factor in the games where this is in your hand and you're like, well, I'm not going to cast this because it just literally does nothing.
Right. Or you can't because of the mana. Yeah, I hate it. These cards are interesting. I'm sure there's some engines you can get going, but game in and game out, I can't imagine that Riveteer's Ascendancy is going to be a card that you even want to build around.
Well, part of the thing about Riveteers and Maestro's Ascendancy in particular is they have to be balanced for constructed, because both these effects are pretty strong. Imagine Riveteer's Ascendancy in like the kind of Jund sack or black red sack things, if there wasn't like this cost gate on it.
Right.
It would be pretty gross. So that's kind of where you end up with this kind of like, build around C, kind of not really going to get there sort of deck.
Right. It might be fun, but not really a thing. Next is Ognus the Dragon's Lash. So this is the rare with the weird mana cost. So this one is 1 and a red, and then you can either pay all red or a black and 2 red, or a green and 2 red, or a black, a red, and a green in addition to the 1. 4 mana, 3/3 haste. It's a legendary Viashino warrior. And whenever a creature you control with haste attacks, so let's not forget that counts Ognus here, create this is a nice twist. This is a shout out to all the people who, when they get on coverage, actually tap the things that you have to tap and sacrifice. You create a tapped treasure token, meaning that you can't use it straight away.
Yeah, which I think is, again, more of a constructed thing, because I think in limited, yes, it's going to matter sometimes, obviously. But the turn you play this, it doesn't really matter, because you're probably not casting another thing that turn anyway.
Right.
The turn after, it stings a little. You can't play your 6-drop or what have you. But 4 mana, 3/3 haste that makes a treasure. Pretty good.
Yeah.
It's kind of a haste lord, in quotes, where it combines with other haste creatures like Blitz and whatnot. Because this is this is 1 per creature. This is not one of the one or more attacks. Like if you attack with 3 haste creatures, you're getting 3 tapped treasure tokens.
Yeah. That's sweet. Yeah, and it spots you 1. I like it. And then, it slots in with, there's cards that care about sacrificing things and treasures as well. So this is gonna, kind of be a glue and not really ask you for much. It's fairly easy to cast and the stats are fine. So yeah, I like Ognus. I would give Ognus a B, and I would trend it towards B+, because I think treasures are really powerful in these type of sets, but I like B for Ognus, the Dragon's Lash.
I like B for Ognus as well.
Unleash the Inferno costs 1 black, red, green. It's an instant, and it says Unleash the Inferno deals 7 damage to target creature or planeswalker. When it deals excess damage this way, destroy target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls with mana value less than or equal to that amount of excess damage. So these are, when you play a lot of Magic, this type of card just sort of clicks. This thing has sort of trample. You add up how much trample damage you can destroy an artifact or enchantment with that mana value. Very wordy, very weird, kind of a lot going on. But bottom line is we have a 4 mana kill anything, and it has an added upside of occasionally nabbing an artifact or enchantment as well. And if there is an artifact or enchantment, there's a good chance you're going to be able to kill it, because 7 damage is usually quite excessive for just killing a single creature. So yeah, Unleash the Inferno seems fine to me. Good removal spell, potential for upside. I still like it at like a B, right? It's still just a 4 mana kill anything.
Yeah, I like it as a B. It would be like a B- if it didn't have the enchantment or artifact clause, because 4 mana with 3 colors is a kind of near the bottom of the range of removal as far as it comes to premium removal. The fact that this can easily blow up a treasure or random aura or equipment or something, yeah, that's a nice little bonus to have. So I like B on Unleash the Inferno.
Next is Ziatora's Envoy. And this is the lieutenant, if you will. So it's 1 black, red, green, 4 mana for a 5/4 trample Viashino warrior rare. Hello. And when it deals combat damage to a player, look at the top card of your library. You may play a land from the top of your library, or cast a spell with mana value less than or equal to the damage dealt from the top of your library without paying its mana cost. If you don't, put that card in your hand. Dude, this card's crazy. It also has Blitz for 2 black, red, green. So you can one-shot it and get a card when it sacrifices. Like, these cards are insane. When you read this, you're like 4 mana, 5/4 trample. You're like, all right, well, how much damage am I taking on my upkeep or whatever? And it's like, oh, no. It's just all good news from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, just huge trampler with just tons of upside. I don't think you're going to want to blitz this all that often, because getting to have hit with this repeatedly is good. But where you do want to blitz it is where it's going to trade off. Imagine they have a 4/4 and you have this in your hand. If you blitz this, they're probably just going to take 5. But the thing is, if they do that and you have a 4 or a 5-drop on top of your library, you got a huge mana boost.
Disaster.
And then you effectively drew 2 cards, because when this dies, you draw another card.
Ugh. What a tough card to decide whether you block. Also, I will say that if you get off to a quick start, right, you go 2-drop, 3-drop, and you're looking at this Envoy, yeah, there might be a time when you just cast it, but if you could play a different 4-ball and then curve Blitz into this, like, it is so much damage to do, a 5 mana 5/4 trample haste that just overwhelms your opponent. That's going to be a thing too. This card's fantastic. I mean, it's an easy A.
Yeah, I don't really see a reason not to give Zeotora's Envoy anything other than A.
Let's see if Zeotora the Incinerator can keep up. This is the boss. It is 3 black, red, green, so 6 mana for a 6/6 flying legendary demon dragon at Mythic. This better be good. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, Zeotora deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target, and you create 3 treasure tokens. How much do we value treasure tokens at that stage? We have 3 colors of mana plus 6 total mana available to cast Zeotora in most scenarios. By the time that happens, I assume those treasure tokens aren't like, they lose utility over time, and this is later in the game.
I think it's still pretty good.
But still pretty good?
Getting to double spell almost guaranteed the turn after you sack something is nice. Getting to cast an instant, like imagine you play this, you sack a creature, you sack a 2/2 to kill their 2/2, not the most exciting. But then on their turn, you can now cast your 3 mana instant. Like, that's pretty strong.
That's true. That's true. And then also we mentioned before, but there are cards that care about, sacrificing things, treasures, etc.
Yeah, I mean, this is a 6 mana 6/6 flying with a pretty significant upside, getting to throw creatures around. Also, it's to any target, so you can play this and sack your 5/5 to just hit them for 5.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's incredible. Also, the number one thing to note here, by the way, when you're looking at cards like this, is that it triggers on the end step, and it doesn't cost you any mana, right? Like, this happens now. You play Zeotora, your opponent's like, oh, crap. You go to my end step, and they're looking at their board, they're looking at their life total. The only reprieve is that you can't sacrifice Zeotora to itself. So you can't just like 6 them out of nowhere, but still that is extremely powerful. An easy A for Zeotora the Incinerator for me.
Yeah, easy A.
All right, let's move on to Cabaretti, otherwise known as Naya. Cabaretti Ascendancy. Let's see if they can save this one.
You'll like this one. You'll like this one.
Okay, because we have an insane one, and then 3 kind of not so great. So red, green, white for an enchantment. And at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature or planeswalker card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. Ooh. If you don't put the card in your hand, you may put it on the bottom of your library. Oh, I like that. Yeah, that's sweet. Limited decks are, often heavy creatures, right? Like that, it's not uncommon to see 15, 17 creatures in your deck. If you reveal one, you just get to draw it. So that's great. But if not, if it's a land and you don't need it, you can just put it on the bottom and draw your card for the turn. That's great.
Yeah. Also, if you have Cabaretti Ascendancy in your deck, you probably are closer to like 18 to 20 creatures ideally. And not only because of this card itself, but also just Cabaretti in general just wants to have tons of creatures in their decks. So, and yeah, just overall, it's going to improve your draw step one way or the other, and often just by doubling it. So it doesn't ask a whole lot of you. Obviously, you do have to put creatures in your deck, but it's not going to be good in a 9 creature deck. But I just don't imagine that Cabaretti decks will have 9 creatures most of the time anyway. So
yeah.
I'm in for this. I like B for Cabaretti Ascendancy.
Me too. Yeah, B for Cabaretti Ascendancy. Really, really solid. Next is Incandescent Aria. Same mana cost, red, green, white. For a sorcery, it deals 3 damage to each non-token creature. This is a rare.
So
sorcery spieled 3 to every non-token.
The joke here is it doesn't kill your citizen tokens that kind of you get make for free, right? Remember all those like green and white cards that were making citizens?
Yeah.
Even some of the red ones did. So
sure.
I think because it's these 3 colors specifically, this is slightly better than 3 mana deal 3 to every creature. Those cards tend to be okay. They tend to not be crazy good because you're trying to set up this sweeper, then they play a 3/4, and you're like, dang. You end up in a spot where the plan does not work out. But this not hitting tokens means that often you'll be able to cast this, kill 2 of their creatures, and not kill your 2 tokens. And you'll be pretty happy with that. So
it's pretty good.
I mean, I like B- on Incandescent Aria. I think it's a solid card. I don't think it's amazing.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. It does seem to fit this color trio particularly well. Ginny Fey Jetmir's Second. Yeah, there's that lieutenant thing we were talking about. So this one has a mana cost of you must pay a green, but then you can pay a green-red hybrid and also a green-white hybrid. So 3 mana total for a 3/3 legendary elf druid rare. If you would create one or more tokens, you may instead create that many 2/2 green cat creature tokens with haste, or that many 3/1 green dog creature tokens with vigilance.
So this requires a little more work than most of the lieutenants. They've mostly just been just incredible just once you cast them. Mm-hmm. Or I guess this isn't, I don't know which one's the lieutenant, which one's the hybrid, whatever.
Yeah.
the naming convention is confusing sometimes because it certainly is named like a lieutenant. But
it certainly is.
In any case, if you make one token with this, you upgrade it a 1/1 into a 2/2 or a 3/1 with a minor ability. If you make like 5 tokens, this card is of course incredible because you turn 5 1/1s into 5 3/1s.
Mm-hmm. And do you get to choose for each?
No, it's for each instance of making tokens. But if you cast a card that says make 2 citizens, you could make 2 cats or 2 dogs.
Okay.
It's fitting. The dogs are generally a little stronger than the cats, but we already knew that. So I think this card's fine because at its core, it's a 3 mana 3/3 with a slightly easier to casting cost than most of the 3 color cards that you'll find. And then in these colors, you're gonna sometimes get value off it. So it looks like a B- to me.
Okay, and there is a slight build around element to it. You're getting a 3 mana 3/3 without, so it's fine. But yeah, get those token makers in there to get Ginny Faye fully pumped up. All right, Fleetwood Dancer. We call these cards rate monsters, right? They're just like a bunch of stats tacked onto a card, nothing real special beyond that. That's what this is. I
think you've been listening to a little too much music. It's Fleetfoot Dancer.
What did I call it?
Fleetwood.
Did I really?
Fleetwood Mac.
That's funny. Fleetfoot Dancer. Thank you. It's a 1 red, green, white for a 4/4 elf at rare. And it has trample, lifelink, and haste.
Oh, incredible. I mean,
that is a trio that you want. Yeah.
Where this can't, at the very least, put you in a much better position, if not outright put you in a winning position.
Yes.
And if there is, then you are in a lot of trouble. So,
yep.
I mean, imagine this on turn 4. Incredible. Your opponent's like on the back foot immediately. They can almost never block it, and you get an 8-point life swing right off the bat. But also imagine on turn 10 where it's like, oh, this was a close race, and now it's not. So,
yep.
I would give Fleetfoot Dancer an A-. Just a great card at pretty much any point.
That's right. Yeah. If you could trade out one of the abilities,
Trample.
You would trade out Trample. Like if you could get Vigilance, would you?
Yeah, you would get Vigilance or First Strike instead of Trample.
Okay,
obviously flying.
Obviously flying and menace and stuff. Okay, and then that brings us to Jetmir.
Well, I guess if I could, I'd trade Trample for Annihilator 5. But yeah.
You're a big dreamer. Jetmir Nexus of Revels is the boss. It is 1 red, green, white for a 5/4 legendary cat demon Luis. You'll notice it's not a dog that runs the ship here. Mythic rare. Lots of text here. So 4 mana 5/4. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and have vigilance as long as you control 3 or more creatures. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and have trample as long as you control 6 or more creatures. And creatures you control also get +1/+0 and have double strike as long as you control 9 or more creatures. 9's pretty tough even in a token situation, but let's focus on the first 2 as things that'll actually happen. +1/+0 and vigilance is going to happen a lot of the time in these decks because you only need 3 creatures, and this is a creature, so it's only 2 others. The next one's really the kind of inflection point for the card. So they get another +1/+0 and trample as long as you get to 6 creatures, which is, all your things are getting +2/+0, trample and vigilance. That is going to make your opponent's life extremely difficult.
It's the sort of thing that it pays you off the more successful you are, which sounds like a mob boss, because if you get to 6 creatures, you're probably pretty happy in your Cabaretti deck. And then also they're getting +2/+0 trample and vigilance. So I don't even know how they're getting up to 9 without being dead. I guess the joke is you play this as your 9th creature and just swing with everything or whatever. But
yeah,
I mean, 4 mana for a 5/4 that has a pretty significant upside that's obviously quite strong. It's going to be good in the tokens deck. Often you'll play this, get a nice little vigilance attack in, and then try to get up to 6. Though sometimes what will happen is you'll play this, decline to attack because you want to get up to 6, then attack because that attack's a lot more devastating. So you might actually pump the brakes a little when you get Jetmir out. But you can also look for playing this as your 6th creature intentionally, like kind of slow rolling it. The one reason not to do that is it's also pretty beefy. You kind of want to attack with your now 7/4 trample vigilance as well. Yes. So it's not bad to just cast it. But yeah, Jetmir, I mean, it's a powerful card that becomes stronger if you do what this family wants to do, which is generally good incentives, because it will naturally go like it's the sort of thing where if you just draft cards of these 3 colors, Jetmir will probably do pretty well. It's kind of hard to assemble too many cards of these colors and not have this be a powerful effect, especially given it starts out in the like kind of low B range at 4 mana 5/4. So, I mean, I like B plus A minus on Jetmir. A minus probably.
I would say A minus.
There's some games where it's just absurd. It is kind of bad when you're behind though.
Yeah, the one thing is that like it's almost always in this color tree going to be a 4 mana 6/4 vigilance. Like that's a lot of stats for 4 mana. Like that is a thing that your opponent really has to deal with. So I like A minus on Jetmir, and you can. It's interesting, double-edged sword. You can sandbag it and try to kill your opponent in one shot out of nowhere, but also if you do play it out and you're on that fringe from like 6 creatures, and they could either kill this or kill another creature to take you off of it, that can be a major swing against you. You have to be very, very careful. I'd be more inclined to just treat Jetmir as a really efficient creature and tussle with it, and then hope to get that benefit if the door opens for it. But that is very fragile. If they kill any one of your creatures, they bump them all down to no more trample and all that power goes away. That can be a way to lose a combat in a game. Okay, those are the triple colored cards. Now we're going to move to the double colored cards, of which there are, what is
6.
There's 6 total.
Yep, there's one of each allied color pair plus Obnixilus as like the Planeswalker.
Gotcha. Okay, so first one is called Scheming Fence. Does that mean like a fencer?
No, a fence is someone who traffics in stolen goods.
Oh.
So like a pawn shop owner is the legitimate side, but if they also buy and sell goods they know to be stolen, they're a fence. They're fencing goods.
Did not know that. This is white-blue for a 2/3 human citizen at rare. As Scheming Fence enters the battlefield, you may choose a non-land permanent. Activated abilities of the chosen permanent can't be activated, and Scheming Fence has all activated abilities of the chosen permanent except for loyalty abilities. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate those abilities. That's pretty cool. I mean, it's a 2 mana 2/3, but with some upside.
Yeah, it's a citizen, which is always nice. It's kind of Pivot Needle-esque because you know, or Phyrexian Revoker. The difference is the permanent has to be in play. You don't get to name a permanent. You get to choose one.
Right.
And
that is a minor upside, right? Like,
well, it makes it play cleaner. It's not actually upside because like.
Oh, sorry. I meant a bigger picture. It's additional text about this stealing, shutting down and stealing is minor. In upside.
Yes, I think it's quite minor. Like it'll be really strong sometimes if they have a good activated ability and you just get to like turn theirs off while also making, like, imagine they play Glittermonger and you're like, play this. Now you can't tap your guy to make a treasure, but I can tap this to make a treasure. Like
that's cool.
You're going to be really excited about that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's just not. I think this is a card that would be very easy to overrate. I think that a newer player might look at this and be like, this card's sick. And it's really just like a 2/3 with a little bit of a bump. I
mean, it's a rare based on complexity and the fact that this text is kind of weird. You don't want it all over the place more than power level. Not that rarity and power level are exactly correlated.
Right.
But
C+.
If this is a common, you give it a C+.
Yeah.
The fact that it's a rare shouldn't change that. I mean, it doesn't. So yes, right. I like Scheming Fence as a C+. And you learned a new word today.
I learned a new word. What about Haven Heartstabber?
This is blue-black for a 1/1 flying bird assassin at rare.
Ooh, I like that.
As long as there are 5 or more mana values and cards in your graveyard, it gets +2/+2 and has Death Touch. So when activated, 3/3 flying Death Touch. And when it dies, you mill 2 cards, then draw a card. So no matter what, it's a 2-mana 1/1 flyer that dies to mill 2 and draw a card. So two advantages, one of which is very big. Drawing a card is huge. And then if you have the blue-black thing going, yeah, this card is a 3/3 Death Touch flyer. So even without the 5 or more card clause, I would say this is in the like B range, because a 2-mana 1/1 that dies to draw a card is fantastic.
It is.
And then the fact that it enables other cards like it is great. And of course, it pays you off very handsomely if you do end up there. So I like B+ for the Heart Stabber.
Me too. And I like that extra mill too, to help you get the other cards, in the graveyard. It helps itself. Corpse Explosion is 1 black-red for a sorcery at rare. As an additional cost to cast it, exile a creature card from your graveyard, and it does damage equal to the exiled card's power to each creature and each planeswalker.
I like Corpse Explosion quite a bit. It takes a little setup, right? You do have to have a creature in your graveyard. But what I really like about this is it's modular. You get to choose, do I want to exile a 2-power creature or a 5-power creature? And if you have done a good job of filling your graveyard, you get that option, because sometimes in the late game, you'll want to deal 3 to everything and not 5 to everything. And sometimes you want to blow up the world and just exile whatever your biggest thing is. So I think in a creature-heavy deck, this is generally going to be good. It plays nicely with Connive if you're, if you're the Maestros, right? Or just have black Connive cards, because you can discard your 6/6 early in the game. It
plays nice with Blitz.
Yeah, with Blitz or other sacrifice things that put creatures into the graveyard. And it works nice if you've got high toughness creatures. You have a 4/4 in play and they have 2 3/3s. You can cast this, exile a 3/3, and blow up their things. So I think you get a lot out of Corpse Explosion. The downside is sometimes this will be uncastable. It'll just be in your hand. You have no creature in your graveyard, or you have like a 1/1 in your graveyard.
Right, or you don't have a graveyard that lines up well with the board. Right. Or, it does suffer the classic sweeper thing too, which is just like if you're ahead.
Well, but the thing is, if you're ahead, this could still be good. Because sometimes you'll cast this and it'll kill 2 of their creatures and none of your creatures.
Oh, I see. You can line it up to snipe a couple of things. Yeah, okay.
That flexibility, if this was just exile a creature and it deals 10 damage to everything.
Right.
I think that, yes, there's obviously ways that card would be better, especially in constructed. But in limited, I think the fact that you can choose how big the explosion is going to be, how big the corpse is that you pack full of explosives, it means that it opens the door for a significant advantage. So I would give Corpse Explosion a B, but there's games where this is just going to be unbelievably good. Yeah,
that makes sense. Interesting card. Ob Nixilis, the Adversary, is next. It's 3 mana, 1 black-red for a 3 loyalty Nixilis at Mythic. It has Casualty X. It says the copy isn't legendary and has starting loyalty X. And then just as a reminder, it says, as you cast this spell, you may sacrifice a creature with power X. When you do copy this spell, the copy becomes a token. So normally the X is stated, but here it's being used to populate the loyalty of the copy of Ob Nixilis. So if you sack any creature with it, you can have 2 copies of this, but as it said, the copy's not legendary so that you can actually keep it. So 3 loyalty on the base model here. +1 is each opponent loses 2 life unless they discard a card. If you control a demon or devil, you gain 2 life. The -2 is create a 1/1 red devil creature token with when it dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. And the -7 is target player draws 7 cards and loses 7 life.
So a lot going on here. Let's ignore the casualty for a second. How good would Ob Nixilis be? Well, you'd pay 3 mana, you'd immediately get a devil. And then you'd +1 and probably drain them for 2 and gain 2, right? They lose 2, you gain 2 because you have that devil in play if you're able to keep it for a turn cycle. And then ideally you +1 again, then -2 it again. So every 3 turns you get a devil while draining them on the way. That's pretty good. I would always play that card if I was in these colors. Adding Casualty X, I think could be really good because first of all, if you sack something with a high power, you're getting close to that ultimate of draw 7, lose 7, which it's not clear which direction you point that, but either way could be effective. And if you add a sacrifice effect, like you could, like the involuntary employment where you steal their creature and sack it, that could be amazing.
That's gross.
Also with if you have enough mana later in the game, you like blitz something out and then attack, and then you play this sacking that creature. And just sacking a 3-power creature and then making 2 devils immediately. You have 2 Ob Nicholases out. It's going to be pretty hard for them to kill either of them unless they have flyers. The one thing is this is fairly weak to flyers.
Okay. And then also just the pressure of having 2 of these of really any loyalty and plussing them both. Like that starts to add up pretty quickly too. Like we're kind of saying, well, they're going to pay life to keep cards in hand, when they have life. But I mean, if it starts being 4 life a turn just to keep their hand, like that's adding up really fast too, huh?
And if you're gaining life, now not only have you gained a bunch of life, but they have multiple planeswalkers to deal with. So you end up with like a huge life total advantage. So I like the whole package here. I think it's going to lead to really interesting games. Like I don't think this is an easy card to play with or against. But I mean, I can imagine a scenario where you play this, copy it, and you just tick up both. And
yes.
then now they have a 4 loyalty and a 5 loyalty Ob Nixilis, and they just lost 4 life, and they're like, all right, well, what do I do?
Right.
So
they've got a real problem on their hands there. Yeah. The design is super interesting because of course the play out is normally you want to get a couple of creatures down and then play your planeswalker, and then the creatures can protect the planeswalker. Here it actually is requiring you to sacrifice one of them, but then you get an additional planeswalker, which is a really interesting twist. What it makes me think is that the line that you talked about where you, like, let's say you play a 2-drop, then on turn 3 you play Ob Nixilis, sack the 2-drop, have both of these, plus them both, or -1 and plus the other, and be like, start hammering their hand basically, is really good. And then I like the later, not the middle ground play, because then you're sacrificing like 3 or 4 mana creatures that you really kind of need on the battlefield in a lot of spots. But if we fast forward like 2 or 3 turns later, where you can do the Blitz plus Ob Nixilis play, or something's under an aura or whatever, and now you're getting an Ob Nixilis on 3, but another one that could be on 5 that you can plus right away, and you could still have potentially a creature to block. Now your opponent's also in a really tough spot. So I kind of like the really early Ob Nixilis or the slightly later Ob Nixilis as like kind of the optimal times to cast it. But I would be looking to sacrifice a creature almost every time if I could. I mean, this thing's a real problem.
It's quite a bit better than a random 3/3 if you have one lying around. So,
and then
I would
also
give Ob Nixilis an A-. I think Ob Nixilis is really good.
And there's also like, if you get both of them, like let's say one of them's a 2 loyalty and then you get the 3 loyalty, you could just like make a devil, then plus the other one and get the drain, right?
Yeah, you can also do that. You have a lot of optionality. So
yeah, A- for Ob Nixilis, the adversary. Really, really sick design. What about Black Market Tycoon?
It's a red-green for a 2/2 cat rogue at rare. It taps to create a treasure token and says at the beginning of your upkeep, it deals 2 damage to you for each treasure you control. So this is also a smuggler, right? Where the goods are hot. If they lie around too much, you start getting punished for it. So at minimum, this is a red-green 2/2 that taps for any color of mana because you can immediately sack the treasure. But if you want to play this and start stacking treasures to maybe play a 7-drop, you might have to pay a little bit of life. It's going to start pinging you for that. But I mean, the baseline of 2 mana 2/2 taps for any color is very good, and it makes a treasure, which the cards that care about treasure get an additional bonus. It has a slight drawback of this plus other treasure makers is kind of a nombo, because you'll then end up with treasures in play, but you can always sacrifice them. So I like B for Black Market Tycoon. It's a mana dork with some kind of interesting play.
Yeah, B for Black Market Tycoon. Last 2-color card is Park Heights Pegasus. This is green-white for a 2/1 flying trample.
They're just giving away trample like candy these days.
They are. They have a reason on this one. When it deals combat damage to a player, so this opens up the door for them blocking with a 1 toughness creature and actually still getting damage in. You draw a card if you had 2 or more creatures enter the battlefield under your control this turn. That's a lot. I mean, that's just a lot. Like, you're going to lose your Park Heights Pegasus, and you have to have already had these creatures ETB. And they have to have a 1 toughness blocker. Like, it's kind of a lot to ask. It's a weird design.
Yeah, it is, but it's also a 2 mana 2/1 flying trample.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fine.
Not against it.
Also, what you can do, you can like attack with it. You haven't played any creatures, so like, fine, I'll take it. When they did after they've not blocked, or actually, it actually triggers no matter what. The ability triggers no matter what. So once you've dealt damage, it goes in the stack and it'll say, well, if you draw a card, if you've done 2 more creatures. You cast the instant speed Cab Ready Charm, make 2 creatures, and you're like, bam.
Got him.
A B minus.
Yeah, B minus, C plus. I mean, 2/1 trample flyer's still fine for 2 mana. Like that's
I like B minus on the Park Heights Pegasus.
B minus on Park Heights Pegasus. All right, we're gonna go to the single color cards now. We're gonna start with black this time, just to kind of keep it mixed up here, and that means that our first card is Cut of the Prophets, which is black X for a rare sorcery.
So this is the card I've been waiting on for LR, but have yet to cast.
It looks like they took it more literally in the artwork here. Like this guy's getting cut up. Like this card has Casualty 3. So once again, as you cast it, you may sacrifice a creature with power 3 or greater, and if you do, you get to copy this spell. It says you draw X cards and you lose X life.
So this is a card I don't really want to copy, and I especially don't want to copy by sacrificing a real creature.
Yeah, it's really steep costs here.
Look, there are matchups where this card is good, where you spend 6 mana, draw 4, lose 4, and that's what you did on turn 6. And your opponent's like, man, that's going to be hard to beat. We're both, we're playing Obscura against Maestros, and you're just like, it's all about card advantage. There's matchups where you're looking at this card in your hand, you're like, well, I'm never casting this.
Mm-hmm. I'm too far behind. I'll just die. Like the punishing combination of life loss plus taking away your board presence, if you go for the casualty, is really tough.
Or even just life loss plus spending 5 to 7 mana and not affecting the board.
Yeah. Yeah, this card feels like one that, looks interesting and cool. I mean, it certainly has the upside of drawing a huge amount of cards if you're at a fully stable scenario with a good life total, but it just doesn't happen often enough.
Part of the problem is the control decks use our life total as a resource a lot of the time. So they're just, even when they've got the game to the state to where they're winning, where they have the stable board and it's turn 7, this isn't really the card you want to cast for that 6 or 7 mana. You just often aren't. It just opens the door for them. It's part of the reason why the reverse Sphinx's Revelation, draw X, gain X, was such an amazing control finisher. It's because all you want when you're drawing 3 or 4 or more cards is life, so you get to use those cards. This does the opposite.
It does the opposite.
So we said there's no sideboard cards. I actually think this is like a sideboard B, where control against control, this could just be game breaking.
Yes. So there you go. We found a sideboard card in the Rare and Mythic review. Next is Tenacious Underdog. I got to say, this dude doesn't look like an underdog. Like he's just ripped.
This is like, they're leading up to the next Pro Tour, and they're like, all right, feature match round 1, the Tenacious Underdog, Paulo Vitor Dominarosa.
Yeah, it's like, can he pull it out again? 1 and a black for a 3/2 Human Warrior rare. And it says, you may cast Tenacious Underdog from your graveyard using its Blitz ability, which might make you wonder what its Blitz ability is. Well, it's Blitz for 2 black and pay 2 life. And I'm going to read the reminder text on Blitz real quick here. If you cast this spell for its Blitz cost, it gains haste, and when this creature dies, draw a card, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So can you just keep looping this guy?
Every turn, you can pay 4 mana and 2 life. The life's important. Otherwise, this card would just be, I think,
that's why they tack that on there. Yeah.
But you can pay 4 mana to, at the least, draw a card and often deal 3 to your opponent, or force them to jump.
Okay. And also, by the way, it's a 2 mana 3/2, which is kind of a hammer.
Yeah, you can just cast it on turn 2 and your opponent's just going to roll their eyes. Against an opponent that has like passivism type effects, what you might want to do is try to discard this to like a connive thing. So you're just always blitzing it. You're never putting it in play. But it doesn't matter how you use this card. It's just incredible. I would give Tenacious Underdog an A-. It's a really strong card.
Okay. I'll go A- on. That's awesome. I mean, it's also just a 2 mana scenario.
Well, I mean, if you're playing control and your opponent plays this, you're like, this is going to be a really hard game to win.
Yes.
If you're playing aggro versus aggro, it's still a 2 mana 3/2. They're going to have to trade. Then you start, pounding them. Control against control, this card's very good.
Yes.
So it's, quote, worst case scenario is when you're playing control and you have it against an aggro deck. But even then, it's a 2 mana 3/2 with upside late game. Like,
totally.
There's no point where this card is not fantastic. Underdog, real underdog.
Yeah, wow, really scrapping it out there. Tenacious Underdog. Cemetery Tampering is next. It's 2 and a black for an enchantment. It's got Hideaway 5, and I'll read the text on Hideaway. There's a few other cards with Hideaway too. This one is, When this enchantment enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library, exile one of them face down, then put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So that's what Hideaway is now. They changed it a little bit. So what does the enchantment do? At the beginning of your upkeep, you may mill 3 cards. Then, if there are 20 or more cards in your graveyard, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. The exiled card, once again, is the Hideaway card. So all this is doing is self-milling you. Once you self-mill sufficiently enough, you'll get the card from Cemetery Tampering. You get to play it for free. It's really powerful in that way. But man, how long does it take to get me up to 20 cards? And how great is that really, right? Like I think a comp would be, what if this was whatever, 2 and a black, or, figure out a mana cost for it. And it was just Hideaway 5. Like you look at the top 5, you get to play one of them.
Well, I mean,
like that's an okay card.
Look at the top 5, you get to play one, and that card would be obscene because you just play a 5-drop on turn 3.
Maybe. I mean, it's fine, right? Like it's not card advantage. You're getting card selection plus potentially a mana bump. So like if we cost that card at 3 black or something like that, you'd be like, I don't even know if I want to put this in my deck.
Yes, that is true. Once you increase that card's cost to 5 or 6 mana, again, setting aside constructed because of Emrakul's and whatnot,
right?
Then, it gets a lot less appealing.
So this one lines up how against a card like that, because you don't get to cast a card right away. Like you are going to have to mill yourself a bunch to get up to 20 cards in your graveyard. That actually takes a while.
I don't think this card's good. I
think you might die before
bad.
That happens is kind of my point.
You also might mill yourself to the point where if they deal with the card you play off this or whatever your big threat is, you just don't have very many cards left in your deck, and you're in danger of running out of cards. If you have 20 cards in your graveyard, that means, and you have, let's say, 7 lands in play, that's 13 cards left between your deck and the cards in the spells you've played.
Yeah,
that's not very many.
No,
so
I'm off it.
I think Cemetery Tampering's an F. I would
think
not
so
put
too.
this card in your deck.
Is there any argument to I want to self-mill? Like I want to get to the 5 types or something like that?
I don't think that those themes are strong enough to justify this.
Okay. That was my take too. Next is Sanguine Spy. This is 2 and a black for a 2/3 vampire rogue at rare that has menace and lifelink. That's a nice combo. You can pay 1 mana and sacrifice another creature to look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard. And at the beginning of your end step, if there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sold on 2/3 menace lifelink for 3. So
yeah,
everything else is just gravy. Getting to turn other creatures into surveils is pretty nice. Mm-hmm. And then in the late game, this starts drawing you cards every turn, and it kind of gets the life back by attacking. So I like B for Sanguine Spy. I think it's just a solid card.
Yeah, card's awesome. What about Shakedown Heavy?
This is 2 and a black for a 6/4 Ogre Warrior at rare. It's got menace, so it's 3 mana, 6/4 menace.
What? Okay.
But it's got a drawback. When it attacks, the defending player may have you draw a card, and if they do, untap Shakedown Heavy and remove it from combat. So they can pay him off. But
they can pay him off. That's great.
But this isn't like, this doesn't really work. They get the option. It's a Punisher card. If they pay him off, you can still block.
Totally. And also you're getting a card. Like that is not sustainable.
This card is just unbeatable on turn 3. If they play this card on turn 3 and you can't deal with it, there's just almost no way you win the game.
Right.
And I guess it's kind of at its worst in quotes late game when your opponent can let you draw cards to win a race. But even then, this can block. The untapping part is really big there. So I like A on Shakedown Heavy. This card is just like the drawback on this is not nearly enough to make up for the fact of how just good it is to cast a 3 mana 6/4.
That can still block. That's the thing.
Also, it has menace, so like it's not even easy for them to double. Like they have to double block it. They can't just chump block it.
Right. Okay, A for Shakedown Heavy. This is going to really push the boundaries because every single time you give your opponent a choice like this, it tends to punish the card really badly. But I think that this is one that there are no good options. Body Launderer is next. Good God. 2 black for an 3/3 Death Touch Ogre Rogue. It's mythic rare. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, Body Launderer connives. And whenever Body Launderer dies, return another target non-rogue creature with equal or lesser power from your graveyard to the battlefield.
I think they didn't want you looping 2 of these.
Oh, I see.
But so this is a 4-mana 3/3 Death Touch. Its passive ability means it'll let you loot whenever one of your other or their other creature dies. It starts to accumulate counters. It becomes like a 5/5. Oh, sorry, you control. Sorry, whenever one of your creatures dies.
Okay.
But then when it dies, it also just brings something back that you either discarded via connive or it just died because that's how it got all those triggers.
Mm-hmm.
This card is just there's no downside. It's a 4-mana 3/3 Death Touch with multiple upsides. I mean, it's a mythic rare. That makes sense. But I would give Body Launderer an A as well. It's just an outstanding card.
So the game plan here is to get... So like if you discard a creature to this when one of your other guys dies, this will become a 4/4. And you just need to make sure that creature is 3 power or less. Like to give yourself a guaranteed thing to get back when they kill Body Launderer.
Well, it's equal or lesser power. So
So 4 or less, actually.
So yeah, this already brings back 3 power creatures by itself. Like you can play this, block their 5/5, and bring back your 3/3. Just straight up, do no other work.
Okay. So basically, this is a huge lightning rod because their incentive is to kill this.
Yes, when this is in play, if they don't kill this, I don't know why they're killing your other stuff. They might not have a choice, though. Like, imagine you play this on turn 4, attack your opponent with a 3/3 and a 2/2, and they have like a 3/2 in play.
Right.
They're going to take 5? I mean, I guess they could, but what are they going to do then? So,
sweet card. Man, I like A for Body Launderer. There's just no way around it for your opponent.
Not really, no.
What does Angel of Suffering do?
It's 3 black for a 5/3 creature. It's a Nightmare Angel at Mythic Rare. It has flying, and it says if damage would be dealt to you, prevent that damage and mill twice that many cards.
Ugh.
So it's kind of interesting. So imagine that you play this and you have 24 cards left. It kind of means that your life total is 12 while this is in play. Which doesn't sound like on its face that great, right? Because like if you play this on turn 5, on turn 1 you have 33 cards left.
Right.
You have 28 cards left 5 turns later, so it's like you go to 14.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, any card draw makes that smaller or whatever. But what I like about this is 2 things. One, it's 5 mana for a 5 power flyer. So
it's hammering.
It gets the game over with pretty quickly or trades off. The other is your opponent doesn't really get an advantage out of milling you for a bunch, but not enough, right? That's kind of the problem that we're going to have when we see some of these mill half your deck cards. They don't get the job done. So you could have this out, let them hit you and mill 10 or 12 cards, and then trade it off or sacrifice it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're still at a high life total. And the fact that you randomly got milled for 10 doesn't usually matter in a game of limited.
Yeah, because what happens if you play this and then you say, I'm not going to be attacking you with this. Go ahead. And if you want to send over your 5/5 creature or whatever, I can just trade off with it. Then you can kind of have the best of both worlds. Or as you said, you can go, okay, play this, go. They attack you. You say, I'm taking it. You mill some number of cards. Who cares? Then you hit them for 5 in the air. Maybe you do that again. And then you stop attacking and you just say, okay, come at me. And I can trade this thing off for whatever your best creature is. That's a line of play that gets your life total effectively much higher.
Yeah, you have a good amount of control, and really the only fail case I can see that's like a total fail is like they passivism this, they cast, hold for ransom on this, and then hit you and they kill you a lot faster than if you were at your normal life total. But you're describing a scenario where they remove your 5-drop from combat without actually removing it from the board, and then end up hitting you for a pretty good amount of damage still, even if not quite lethal. I think that most of the time Angel of Suffering is going to work out to your advantage because you just have a lot of control over the situation.
It's a lot of stats.
Yeah. I would give it a B+. I think Angel of Suffering is pretty strong.
B+ for Angel of Suffering. And let's also not forget that the mill can really help you. Like these colors do have, cards that care about
this. This isn't getting exiled. It's getting milled.
Right. Shadow of Mortality is the last black card. It is a 15-drop. It costs black, and 13 mana. And it's a 7/7 avatar. It is rare. It says, if your life total is less than your starting life total, this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the difference. So you can start subtracting mana costs from this based on how much life you are below 20.
Right, and that's why it's a 7/7, because when you're at 7, this costs 2 mana.
Right.
I think this card's solid. I wish it was a little better for constructed, because I think Death Shadow is like pretty fun, and adding another version of Death Shadow would be cool. I don't think it's good enough there. But for limited, at what point are you happy with a 7/7? Well, what if you're at 10 life and this costs 5 mana? That's pretty good. 5 mana 7/7's good. 6 mana 7/7's all right. 7 mana 7/7's a little less exciting. The main issue with this is there's some games, especially if you're trying to be aggressive, where you're just at 20.
Right. That's what I was going to say. You describe it as solid, but there are going to be many games where you just actually can't cast this spell. And interestingly, there are games where you're doing well. If you're just hammering your opponent, they don't have anything they can do against it. You can rip up Shadow of Mortality. If they're not attacking you, if you're not losing life from your own cards, it's uncastable. I mean, it's 15 mana.
Well, this goes back to kind of the macro archetypes that I was mentioning before with a Tenacious Underdog, where, look, I know it's not that simple. Most decks kind of trend towards mid-range, but if you're playing a control deck against an aggro deck, this card's going to be good. You're often going to get to play it for, in the 5 mana range, which is strong.
Yeah.
Strong enough to include for sure. And sometimes you'll play it for 3 mana. You're at 8 life or whatever.
It's heck of a double spell turn.
When you're aggro versus aggro, well, maybe you're ahead on life and this isn't doing much. You're kind of costing yourself, right? Because it's a card in hand that's not pressing the aggression. But at some point, if they're attacking you, you can cast it and it'll still be decent. The main drawback is if you're playing a deck against a more controlling deck and they're just not attacking you at all, and you're losing because you're not pressuring them, the answer to that is maybe don't include Shadow of Mortality in your aggressive decks, or try to avoid that. Because in control decks, I think you're often going to be pretty happy with the card as a big finisher. I wish it had another ability. It's kind of feeling like it could have used
just a 7/7.
Flying or Menace or something like that. Maybe that would have been too good. I don't know. But I would give Shadow of Mortality a C, but look to play it in decks that you expect to be on the back foot. It's a good way to come back from that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go a little lower. I'm going to give Shadow a D. I just really have a hard time with the payoff being a big, dumb thing that doesn't really do much. Yeah, it's big. Okay, fine. But that is difficult to set up. And there's times when you just literally can't cast it. And the upside I'm getting when I finally get it down is I get an aggressively costed vanilla creature that is admittedly huge. It's a 7/7, but I don't know. It doesn't help me come back. It doesn't have any abilities that helps me come back outside of just being massive. So I'm going to go D on Shadow of Mortality. I think I'm going to lean on not playing it, generally speaking. Let's move to red, where we've got Devilish Valet. This is 2 and a red for a 1/3 Devil Warrior at rare. It's got Trample, go 1 power Trampler now, and Haste, and it has Alliance. Alliance triggers off of other creatures entering the battlefield under your control. And this one triggers, it gets, you double its power until end of turn.
I don't like Devilish Valet very much. First of all, the Haste is just kind of a joke, because for this to be good, you need to have 2 creatures enter, at which point it's a 4/3, right? 1 goes to 2, 2 goes to 4.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to happen the turn you play it. So the haste is basically irrelevant. Trample is nice because the dream here is what if I have 4 creatures enter the battlefield? It goes 1, 2, 4, 8, bam. Or 16 actually at that point. But I don't think that's really going to play out very often. So I'd give Devilish Valet a D. I don't think you're going to want this card in your deck.
No, it's just too much setup. Next is Professional Face Breaker. This is 2 and a red for a 2/3 rare. It's a human warrior with menace. And it says, whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. And you can sacrifice a treasure to exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Wow.
Oh, this card's fantastic.
That's sick.
So this gets you 1 treasure turn. Again, this is the 1 or more, but it doesn't have to be this creature. So if you curve a 2-drop into this and have an open attack, you just play this and immediately get a treasure. And then probably what happens is next turn, if you don't have a great play you want to make, you start the turn by sacking the treasure. You can play a land if you hit a land. You can probably cast most of your spells on 3 mana or 4 mana at that point. And it's a 2/3 menace for 3.
It is worth noting that the treasure is being paid to the Facebreaker, right? Like you don't get the mana. Mm-hmm.
Yes, you can't use the treasure for mana and to look at the top card or exile the top card. So I would give the Facebreaker a B+.
Yes.
There's some games it's really going to run them over. Late game, it's not the most impressive.
Yeah, really nice. Widespread Thieving is next. This one's 2 and a red for an enchantment, and it's rare. It's part of that cycle. It's got Hideaway 5, and whenever you cast a multicolored spell, you create a treasure token. Then you may pay Wooburg, so 1 mana of each color. If you do, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost.
So this is another one of those Hideaway cards, but this one has a distinct advantage to it, which is you get treasures every time you play a multicolored spell. And I don't have a good sense yet of how many multis you're going to end up with in the average deck. But it's a case where if... What's that?
I think it's a lot.
Yeah, I think. But I mean, is it like 7 or is it 12? Like, are half your cards going to be multicolored?
I would guess half, yeah.
In that case, Widespread Thieving is going to be excellent. I think it's trending towards a build around, but if it's so commonplace that you're going to have half your cards be multicolored, then it's pretty good. Because if this makes, it's the sort of thing where when this is good, it's really good because it'll let you pay 5 mana to play whatever's under it.
Yes.
And you're up a card at that point. And, you obviously, if you have one of each color, you could probably cast most things, but it is good selection.
Well, you're even on cards at that point though, right?
Well, you made 3 or 4 treasures is kind of what
I see. Okay.
Like if this was straight up, how many treasures would you need to make if it didn't have Hideaway for this to be good? If it made 5 over the course of the game, there's some decks that would be happy to play that.
Yep. And you need to know if that's your deck or not.
Yeah. So I think it's still a build around. I think it's a build around B, but it's a pretty good payoff in a red deck that really wants treasures like organically, like has other cards that care about treasures. And then obviously when you get to Hideaway a card, I mean, this is limited, so again, we're not Emra cooling here, but sometimes you can put like a 7-drop under this, and that will be strong.
And it is powerful, and it's a big turn for you too. Because the play pattern for this seems to be like you basically are trying to get to 2 treasures, right? Because most decks are going to be 3 color. You need the other 2 colors to pay for the Wooburg to get the card out.
Yes, but this only triggers when you cast a multicolored spell, so you can't pay 1 of each color until you put a multicolored spell in the stack as well.
Right. I'm saying like I'm giving you credit for having the 3 colors.
No, totally.
Yeah.
I agree with that part. I'm saying like even if you have 1 of each color, you still have to also play a multicolored spell that same turn.
Yes. So
we're talking probably at the very minimum 7 mana. There's no way to get less than that.
Yeah.
Well, one thing to note with all the Hideaway cards, though, it also lets you play the cards when you normally couldn't.
Yes.
So if you have an instant speed, like a charm, and you have 8 mana total with this, or I guess 7 mana because the charm also generates a treasure, you can ambush their thing with by playing a creature on their turn.
There you go. Next is Horde Hauler. This is a vehicle. There's not many vehicles in this set, but this is one. This 3 and a red for a 5/5 artifact vehicle at rare. It's got trample. Crew cost 3, which is kind of the death number usually. Whenever Horde Hauler deals combat damage to a player, though, create a treasure token for each artifact they control. What?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, I think that the joke is you get as much treasure as they do, but there's a few things wrong with that. First of all,
there's a lot wrong with this. Yeah.
They can either not let this through or not, or block it or kill it if they can. Second, they can have probably used or sacked the treasures. They're not just going to let you make 5 treasures off of this.
Right.
And then third, if they have 5 treasures in play, they're not using them. Like, what is going on?
Right. What is happening? And also, there's just going to be a significant number of decks that have no artifacts.
Yeah, right? I mean, it's this. I think is worse than a 6/6 crew 3.
Right.
So, I think it's actually an F. I just don't think you should put this card in your deck.
I don't get it. Yeah. Next is Jaxus the Troublemaker. Jaxus is 3 and a red for a legendary human warrior. 2/3. 4 mana, 2/3 at rare. Come on, Jaxus. Let's see. Red, tap, discard a card. Create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control. It gains haste, and when this creature dies, draw a card. sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step, and you activate as a sorcery speed. So basically you can blitz other things that are on the yard. And Jaxus has blitz of 1 and a red as well. Sweet.
I don't think you're going to blitz Jaxus very often because Jaxus is awesome while in play. So it's only sorcery speed, so you can't make chump blockers, but you're getting to discard a card to, at the very minimum, draw a card once the creature dies. So it's kind of even, except A, you get to attack them with something, whatever your best creature is. B, if you have a creature with an ETB ability, like you can start going off. Even this with Corrupt Court Official, right? The Ravenous Rats.
Oh, yeah.
Discard a card, make a 1/1, they discard a card. Then when your 1/1 dies, you draw a card. Like you're up a card every turn for 1 mana.
Yeah, that's incredible.
This is a kind of a must kill. And then if you're in a real like close race situation, you can blitz this and then copy your 5/5 and attack with them with 2 5/5.
Yes.
So I'm on A- on Jaxus. I mean, they have to kill this card or most boards are going to become pretty annoying for them.
Yeah, I like the flexibility of blitz as well. You can always get something out of Jaxus, and the upside's really, really high. Next is Structural Assault. This is 3 red for a sorcery at rare. Destroy all artifacts. Then Structural Assault deals damage to each creature equal to the number of artifacts that were put into the graveyard from the battlefield this turn. No.
So it's worded that way. It's kind of clever so that you cast this. They have 3 treasures in play. If they sack those treasures in response, this still looks at them.
That's interesting. And also still no.
Yeah, I mean, the joke here is you get to blow up all their treasures and deal 3 to every creature or something, but also it works with your treasures, right? You pay for this with treasures, then it still sees those treasures. I'm not super into Structural Assault. It looks like an F and or like a sideboard D where maybe in some matchups you could consider it, but in general, I think this is not where you want to be.
Yeah, I am not a fan of. I just these cards that require your opponents to have artifacts, like. Huh? Like, that isn't a given. Urabrask, Heretic Praetor is next. This is mythic, as you might imagine. 3 red for a 4/4 legendary Phyrexian Praetor. What is going on there? Are those things coming back again? Haste. So 5 mana, 4/4 haste. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. Okay. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, the next time they would draw a card this turn, instead, they exile the top card of their library. They may play it this turn. Oh, that's great. Yeah. So you're drawing 2 cards a turn, and you're kind of limiting when your opponent can play their cards. That's sweet.
Yeah, and in some cases, forcing them to like play it in an inopportune time, or just being unable to play it if it's not a position where they can play it, you know.
That is really cool. Kenji played a mill deck at the pre-release and then also put this card in his deck.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a great card.
It is a great card. He did, though, multiple times have to find a way to get rid of his own Urabrask because his opponent couldn't get milled from their draw step. It's kind of funny. Yeah.
Funny. Yes,
he had an empty library, and they're like, I'll exile a card.
I mean, Urabrask is a 5 mana 4/4 haste that draws you a card every turn effectively and messes with their turn.
Awesome.
That's an A. I mean, it doesn't, that's just a classic bomb.
Yeah. The only issue with Urabrask is getting to your upkeep again. Like just, crossing your fingers that they don't kill it. That's an A. Last red card, another mythic is called Arcane Bombardment. This one is 4 red for an enchantment at mythic. And it says, whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, exile an instant or sorcery card at random from your graveyard, then copy each card exiled with Arcane Bombardment. You may cast any number of the copies without paying their mana costs.
I'm in love.
I love these cards, but no way.
What? No, this card's good.
No way.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like full build around for starters, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a build around.
And then you have to have 8 instant or sorceries?
The first time you cast a spell with this in play, which, again, it costs 6 mana. I'm not saying this card's a bomb, but you cast a spell, right, after having this, you immediately get to play a spell for free. So let's say you play this on turn 6 and you don't die. Again, that's asking a little bit of you. Then next turn you cast a removal spell. This immediately triggers, exiles a card from your graveyard, and then plays it.
An instant or sorcery from your graveyard, right? at random.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, don't put bad instants or sorceries in your deck, ideally.
But I mean, they are timed appropriately or whatever, and then you get to copy it.
Right. And then the next time, your next turn, you play a spell, or if you have instants, you can actually stagger them.
And then it grows them or whatever.
And then it exiles another card and now plays both.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm off it. I'm not playing this card.
You're missing out.
I'll do it. Look, there will be a stream or a video that I make where I play this card. Don't get me wrong, but like advice, this is an F. Like,
I don't think it's an F.
I mean, okay, so let's start by giving it a build around grade to be fair to it.
Yeah, it's definitely a build around.
So build around
B.
D?
No, I think it's a B because look at it this way. You're playing a Grixis deck that's got, the like casualty sorcery that taps one of their creatures and you draw a card. It's got strangle, it's got other removal and bounce spells. Mm-hmm. And you just play very defensively and you slam this on 6. And then your next turn, you cast a removal spell that then copies another removal spell because that's what you filled your deck with. And then the turn after that, you cast a spell. And now you copy 2 other spells. Like you at that point, you've buried your opponent. You are asking to play a 6-mana spell and to play spells afterwards. But do you remember the 3 red enchantment that when you play a spell, copy it?
Yeah.
I thought that card was a build around B as well. Like in that core set, like you tapped out for that. You hope to not die. And then when that happened,
that did end up being good.
You did end up being good. So not very many decks can play this. I'm not saying you should pick one, pack one Arcane Bombardment, but if you're like I think Maestro is the most natural fit for this. If you're a Maestro deck that has, it ends up in the range of 8 or 9 spells, maybe more, this card is a legit finisher. Because it's a finisher that they can't really interact with very well.
So the hangups I have, besides the obvious, like casting 6-mana spell that doesn't do anything, etc., are that you don't get to choose the spell. So it could just be one that it doesn't line up with the board well or doesn't do what you need it to do at that time. That's huge to me. And then also the setup cost of, it's hard to make a deck that is full of instants and sorceries that can hang. Like you need creatures, right? Creatures hold back multiple creatures. Creatures trade for other creatures. It's hard to make a deck out of all removal spells, like if, that are all instants and sorceries. So I would give it a build around D. Like I think this card sucks. I don't think you should play it in limited unless you're looking to meme or have fun.
I think this card's better than that.
Do you think you'll have a 7-win deck with that's an Arcane Bombardment?
Just one?
Let's move to green. Gala Greeters is next. This is 1 and a green for a 1/1 elf at rare. It's got Alliance, and when another creature ETBs on your side, you choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. You put a +1/+1 counter on the Greeters. You create a tapped treasure token, or you gain 2 life. And you can cap out all 3 of those if you somehow are putting a bunch of creatures into play.
Well, so you get to either gain life if you need life, gain mana if you need mana. It is a tapped treasure token, but it'll still ramp you for next turn. Or grow the Gala Greeters at a +1/+1 counter. So
this card's great. This is just awesome. Like you play this on turn 2, it's like you're going to curve out with creatures and you can do the things that you need to do. That's awesome.
Yeah, I would give Gala Greeters an A-. Like, it stumbles if you run out of creatures, but it's a 2-mana card that every time you play a creature, it generates exactly whatever you're missing. So none of these things are like a full card by themselves. Mm-hmm. But because you get to choose which one, like it's just going to do exactly what you want. That's very efficient. So I like A- on Gala Greeters.
Especially on turn 2. I mean, that thing's like, oh, crap. Evolving Door. Is that like a revolving door? Is next. It's 2 and a green for an artifact at rare. It says you can pay a mana and tap it and sacrifice a creature to count the colors of the sacrificed creature. Then search your library for a creature card that's exactly that many colors +1. You exile that card and then shuffle, and then you may cast the exile card at sorcery speed.
F. Get it out of here. You have to cast the card.
You have to cast the card.
You're not spending. So you're down a card because you played the door, and what it lets you do is gives you the luxury of casting the card after you sacrifice, and it doesn't even go up that much because you sack a monocolor creature to get a 2-color creature, and then sack a 2-color creature to get a 3-color creature, and that's where it ends. So
okay,
F for evolve. I'll always show this the door.
Yeah, fight Rigging is next. This is 2 and a green for an enchantment. This is the Hideaway 5 for green. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then, if you control a creature with power 7 or greater, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost. And it's at the beginning of combat, so you can like play a 2-drop, play Fight Rigging, put a counter on your 2-drop, and start bashing.
I mean, this card's an A.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It would be an A without the Hideaway. You know, when we look at these cards, a 3-mana enchantment that for no mana gets you a +1/+1 counter every turn.
Yes,
like excellent. But this also at some point just like randomly just plays a card that probably costs 4 or 5 mana.
Yes, that's great. And you're gonna get to 7. By the way, that will happen most of the time. And the fact that it triggers on combat's a big game too.
The only reason it's not going to get to 7 is you're going to kill them with your army of like 3/3s and 4/4s before this even gets to that point.
Because you spread it around. Totally.
Right. So, but yes, Fight Rigging is an A.
What about Topiary Stomper?
I like this one. It's a 1 green. So it's 3 mana, 4/4, plant dinosaur at rare. It's got vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, you search for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle.
Wow.
And it can't attack or block unless you control 7 or more lands, which is really 6 because you already went and got 1. And you already have 3 already, right? Presumably. So you're at 4 just on turn 3 here.
This thing's awesome.
I love Topiary Stomper. I would never cut this card from my deck. It's a card I'd pick early. Yeah. It fixes your mana. It gets you card advantage. And it's just not that long until it can start attacking and blocking, you know? So
that's right. And it's big enough to be relevant when it does get to that phase.
Yeah.
A good way to view this would be to like, what would you pay 1 GG for a sorcery that got you a land? Maybe in this set you might. It's borderline. But then, you know, you just get to suspend 4/4 vigilance and just,
sometimes you'll draw this late game and it'll just be on right away.
Yeah, totally.
Still fine. So yeah, I'll give a B+.
B+?
To Topiary Stomper, yeah.
I give it a B. I think Topiary Stomper's plant dinosaur. That's
all right.
Sweet.
We've got an A+ coming.
Okay, give it to me.
Workshop Warchief is 3 green for a 5/3 trample. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. When it dies, you make a 4/4 green rhino token. And it has Blitz 4 green.
Oh my God. What are they doing?
So this is just Thragtusk version 2. So
yeah.
5 mana, 5/3 trample, gain 3. Great. You've gained 3. You're not behind on board. It's a 5/3 trample. They have to deal with it. Then when it dies, you get a 4/4. So it's already just like the sickest 2-for-1 in the world. And then it also has Blitz of 4 green. So if the game is, you know, in the state where you want to just pay 6 mana, whack them for 5, get a 4/4 and draw a card and gain 3 life, you get to do that too. So it's the life game that puts this over the top because
oh my God.
You know, unlike something like Fight Rigging, which is also an excellent card, this is great when you're like losing badly. Like you play, like imagine, you know, this is going to happen at some point. You're playing this like kind of aggressive deck. You're pressuring your opponent and you've got a removal spell in hand. You're like, this is great. They play this. They're like, wow, now they've gained 3. So they're out of range of dying. And if I kill their thing, they just get a 4/4. So it's not like my removal even does anything. I guess I'll have to go trade and then they get a 4/4 still. And it's just a mess. And if you're on the control route, well, them casting this is still bad news for you. So
yes, very.
I'm at A+ on Workshop Warchief. You can't really ask for much more out of a card.
No, the real question is, when do you blitz it, right? And I think the answer is not very often, right? Like it's just too much to give up to basically make them slog through a 5/3 and then the 4/4 and the life and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would blitz it if you really needed to draw another card right off the blitz and you don't think they're going to kill it anytime soon. You're getting your card right away. Mm-hmm. Because you're still getting a 2-for-1 either way, whatever. Right?
Yeah, you are still getting it. But
you're just choosing to do that instead, and it gets, or if the damage right away matters, obviously.
Yeah, so actually maybe you will blitz it more than I'm giving it credit for, because you still get left with the 4/4 and the card. Yeah. Wow. Workshop Warchief, good God. Bootlegger's Stash. This one's 5 and a green for an artifact. It's mythic rare. It says lands you control have tap, create a treasure token. These ones are always tough. You know, this is clearly aimed more for like an EDH type scenario or whatever. The issue being that by the time you get to 6 mana, you know, doubling that mana, creating a bunch of treasure tokens loses a lot of its utility as far as just like casting your spells goes. But man, that's a thing. Like you're making a crap ton of treasures with it. It's just, what are you going to do with them is a question.
So yeah, this fixes your colors, first of all, because now your land's a tap for any color. Then it also lets you get effectively infinite treasure tokens. So if you have ways to use that, you can go off. I mean, stimulus package and this is kind of the combo. Now your lands all tap to make a 1/1.
Mm-hmm.
And it also can ramp you. You take a turn off, the next turn you have 12 mana, with 6 lands.
It's probably an F, right? I mean, like I would build around it and do some cool stuff with it, but like this isn't really where you want to be.
This is the build around D that you thought Arcane Bombardment was.
Yeah, there you go.
You build around it, but there's not that great of a reward. So it's a cool card, though.
2 build around Ds. Vivian on the Hunt is 4 green for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker at Mythic Rare. +2. So this is 6 mana coming down, 4 loyalty, up to 6 loyalty right away. You may sacrifice a creature. If you do, search your library for a creature card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature's mana value, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. Or you can just +1 instead, mill 5 cards, then put any number of creature cards milled this way into your hand, and then -1, create a 4/4 green Rhino Warrior creature token. Dang, that thing's a house.
Yeah, Vivian's fantastic.
Wow.
How many birthing pods do you need a set? I guess 2 is the answer.
2 is the answer.
Again, Vivian's a little vulnerable to flyers, which has not actually traditionally been Vivian's jam. She's actually usually pretty good against those. Mm-hmm. But playing Vivian and making a Rhino, and then if they can't kill it, making another Rhino, you're already well ahead of the game. Getting to +1 and then maybe draw 1 or 2 cards while milling a bunch of cards is also not bad. It gets up to 5 loyalty. The +2 ability is not going to happen
+2, yeah,
all that often. But imagine if you had a creature locked down by an aura, like a 5-drop. You play Vivian +2. You have a 6 loyalty Planeswalker and now a 6-drop. That's that's something. But even just the +1 and the -1 already make Vivian great. I would give Vivian an A. This is the kind of 6-drop that you're going to lose to really quickly if you don't deal with it.
Yeah, and the best ability I think is -1, create a 4/4. Like if you just get to pump out 2 of those things, your opponent's going to get overran. Last green card.
Yeah, I have good news is that we're now going to get to the best green card.
Oh my, no way. Better than Workshop Warchief. All right, let's go.
It's actually close. So Titan of Industry is 4 green. So it's 7 mana, but it's a 7/7 reach trample elemental at Mythic Rare. And when it enters the battlefield, you choose 2. Destroy a target artifact or enchantment, gain 5 life, create a 4/4 Rhino, or put a shield counter on a creature you control.
I get 2 of those things?
Most often, I think it's going to be a Rhino and a shield counter on this, because then you end up with a 4/4 and a 7/7 reach trample with shield.
This is like one of the best creatures I've ever seen. This thing's just unbelievable.
There's not we talked about how often, in what position is these things going to save you?
Yes.
If Titan of Industry doesn't save you, I don't know what's going on.
This is a quadrant theory crusher. Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that's holding it back, of course, is that it costs 7. But when you play this and you gain 5 life and make a 4/4, you have a 7/7 reach plus a 4/4 plus you gained 5. How are they killing you through that? It's not easy at all.
Yeah.
And then, of course, blowing up an artifact or enchantment's great. Putting a shield counter on this if you can afford to is fantastic. So I think it's competitive with Workshop Warchief, but I do believe they are both A+s because
A+.
When you cast these cards, you just don't lose the game very often.
That's one of the best creatures. The litmus test on an A+ is can I lose the game the turn after I cast it? Right. And how often does that happen? Cards like Baneslayer Angel, right, still get to that level because of their mana cost, but they are killable. This is not. It's just not. The crux of all of this, by the way, interestingly, is reach, right? That's the thing that says, okay, I am not dying. I don't care if you have, a pretty good Air Force. I'm going to gain 5, have this thing. One quick question. These things resolve in order? Or my question is, can I put the shield counter on the Rhino?
Yes, because it says a creature. It's not targeted, which also means you choose, all right, I'm going to choose make a Rhino and put a shield counter on a creature I control. And they're in response, kill your Titan of Industry. You're like, okay, I'll put it on the Rhino or put it on something else.
Okay. I just was wondering about that. But yeah, incredible card. Oh my God, I want to open that one now. Let's move to white. First card up is Giada, Font of Hope. This is 1 and a white for a 2/2 legendary creature angel at rare with flying and vigilance. 2 mana, 2/2 flying vigilance. Each other angel you control enters a battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it for each angel you already control. And you can tap Giada to add white and spend this mana to cast an angel spell.
So, so 1 and a white for a 2/2 flying vigilance. And the rest of the text is basically irrelevant.
Some other text, yeah. So this is like a B.
Yeah, it's a B just based on 2/2 flying vigilance for 2. And there are some uncommon angels, so every now and then you'll get the additional value. But yeah, B for Giada, Font of Hope.
Extraction Specialist is 2 and a white for a 3/2 human rogue at rare. It's got lifelink, so 3 mana 3/2 lifelink. Okay. When it enters a battlefield, return target creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. That creature can't attack or block for as long as you control Extraction Specialist.
Great value. I mean, the cards that return 2 cost creatures have typically been a little more situational than you might think.
Yes.
Because, yes, if you play a 2-drop and then trade it off and now this works, you're like, wow, this is great. But the number of games where you just don't have a 2-drop in your graveyard is reasonable. That said, a 3/2 lifelink for 3 is a card I'm already fine playing.
Yeah.
And then if this does get something back, like, yes, the card's locked down until this dies, but that's still fine. It's still a 2-for-1. And because of lifelink, they can't just take hits from this. They're going to keep blocking. So
they will.
I like B at Extraction for Extraction Specialist. It's a very solid card.
A lot of upside and, not asking that much of you. Halo Fountain is next. This is 2 and a white for an artifacted mythic rare. It's got 3 activated abilities. The first one is white, tap it, and untap a tapped creature you control, and you create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. The next one costs 2 white and tap it, and untap 2 tapped creatures you control to draw a card. And the last one costs 5 white, tap it, and untap 15 tapped creatures you control. And as you might imagine, you get a big payoff. You win the game. So let's focus on the first ability. Let's say that it's turn 4. You've played a couple of creatures. You play Halo Fountain on 3, and then you have the ability to pay an extra white mana, tap it, tap an untapped creature to make a 1/1. How good is that to start off with?
Well,
seems good to me.
That's not what it does, though.
Oh, sorry. What did I... Oh,
it untaps a tapped creature, which is actually quite a bit worse. You might think it's an advantage because now you're untapping instead of tapping. But what it means is if you have a 1/1 in this, you have to attack with the 1/1 to use it.
And then you're kind of breaking even.
Yeah, you're not really making headway there. And then and the same with the 2 white one is like
now it's even 2 creatures you have to find a way to get tapped.
So like you need to be kind of winning on board for this card to really, really pay dividends. Because you get to untap 2 creatures. You can attack and block with them, but that means you have like 2 creatures that you're comfortable attacking with.
If you play limited a lot, that sounds easy and doesn't come up nearly as often as you think it would. The last one's easy because you could just attack with all of them and then untap them and win the game. And there's really no way to interact. So that's assuming you have actually, wait, is there a way to interact? It's untap 15 tapped creatures. So if they kill one of them,
well,
you target them.
Okay, first of all, set aside the fact you have 15 creatures in play.
Yeah.
If they let you attack with 15 creatures, they can't. At that point, it's already too late.
Lose. Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. So
let's Halo Fountain's an F. I don't like it.
So don't do drugs is the
yeah. Okay. Or put Halo in martini glasses. Don't do either of those things.
I did not. Halo Fountain gets an F. What about Depopulate?
So it's 2 white for a sorcery at rare. Each player who controls a multicolored creature draws a card and then destroy all creatures. So the obvious comparison is how good is this compared to like just Wrath of God, Day of Judgment, right? Destroy all creatures for 4.
I like it less.
Well, it does the important thing, which is it destroys all creatures because that's really what you want. First of all, it's not really conditional on that. It will kill all creatures. Mm-hmm. The question is it better or worse that you give each player who controls a multicolored creature a card?
And it is definitely worse.
Yeah, it's worse. It's not like tons worse because you can also have one. But
the problem is that you don't want to, the whole flex on a 4-mana Wrath is that you can let them play a couple of things and then get them.
Yeah, but I think overall it's still pretty good.
I do too.
A 4-mana Wrath is good.
It still is good.
This is effectively that.
So what if, let me put out a scenario for you. You play one creature, they play 3, they have a multicolored, you don't, and you cast Depopulate. Yeah, like, how are you feeling about that game? Like, you're up a card.
Well, you're even on cards, right? Because you played a creature, so you're down on Depopulating a creature. They're down 3 creatures, and then they drew a card. So now,
right. So they're actually up. So I mean, I don't know.
Well, they're even. You're even on cards. You spent 2, they spent 3, but then they drew a card, so it's like they spent 2.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
but you spent less mana. You spent probably 6 mana, and they spent probably like 9 mana, right?
So give me a better case scenario.
Here's a better case scenario. You both play 2 creatures. You have one multi, one not multi. Then they have the same. They attack. You trade your not multicolored creature for their multicolored creature. They play another creature. Then you cast Depopulate. You killed their 2 creatures. You killed your own creature, but you drew a card. So you got a 2 for 1.
Okay.
The other is you just cast this late game.
Yeah.
You both draw a card. You blow up tons of creatures, and then you play another creature.
And you knew that this reset button was coming, and they didn't.
And you stockpiled your best creatures. Yeah. I think Depopulate's still like an A-. Like, the card is just a really strong effect. 4 mana to destroy all creatures is good. Like, we talk a lot about how 5 mana isn't good, but there's just such a big difference between 4 and 5 mana.
It's huge because you can just snipe the 2, 3, 4 curve out from them.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. B+, A- for Depopulate, right in that range. What about Elspeth Resplendent?
This is 3 white for a legendary Elspeth at Mythic. Has 5 loyalty to start with. So 5 mana, 5 loyalty. +1, choose up to 1 target creature, put a +1/+1 counter and a counter from among flying, first strike, lifelink, or vigilance. I'm surprised there's no shield there. I guess she's Cabaretti is the joke. -3, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may put a permanent card with mana value 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield with a shield counter on it. Oh no, there's the shield counter. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. -7, create 5 white, 3/3 angels with flying. So, Elspeth, if you have a board presence, she amps it up pretty significantly because playing Elspeth, ticking up to 6 loyalty and making one of your creatures a +1/+1 with flying or first strike or lifelink or vigilance, like all those are permanent. They're counters. Yeah. The -3 is kind of weak because you're getting at best a 3 mana permanent, though you can't hit lands, I guess, if you really need to.
Yeah, that seems really steep.
You can get a land with a shield counter.
Because you're just going to miss a percentage of the time too. So,
but the real strength here is you play this, you tick up. They can't attack because you now have a 4/4 first strike or a 4/4 flying. And then you tick up again, and then if they don't attack, you make 5 angels.
Yeah, and then it's game over.
Or you're racing and you play this, put a counter on your 4/4, now you hit them for 5 lifelink. They can attack Elspeth back for 4, putting her down to 2 loyalty. You put another counter on something else, attack for 10 lifelink.
Right.
And then, like, it doesn't matter. You lose Elspeth, you've won the race.
Right.
She's bad if you have nothing in play, but even then you can -3, hope to hit like a 3-drop with shield to block and lose the shield counter, and then that gives you time to untap and +1. I'm liking the way all these scenarios play out. These all sound really good.
This is an A, yeah.
This is an A for Elspeth Resplendent.
Mysterious Limousine is next. This is same cost, 3 white for a 4/4 vehicle at rare. Crew cost is 2 for this thing. So you got a 5 mana 4/4 crew 2, but whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, exile up to 1 other target creature until Mysterious Limousine leaves the battlefield. If a creature is put into exile this way, return each other card exiled with Mysterious Limousine to the battlefield under its owner's control. So does that mean that there's only so much room in the limo?
Yeah, the limo's got space for 1 passenger. So what's cool about this is you can flicker your own ETB creatures over and over with this if you want, or you can just lock down their biggest creature, or you lock down their biggest creature, but then they play a better one, and you're like, all right, I'm actually going to switch targets here, because you get to exile a different creature instead.
Is it a May?
Up to 1, yeah.
It is up to 1. So you could just lock down their thing and just keep it in there and keep attacking with it, and you're all
also
good.
This eats tokens like no other. The tokens don't come back out of the limousine.
Yeah, the door gets shut behind them, and then we're not going to see him anymore. Okay, yeah, Mysterious Limousine actually seems quite strong then. Like, even if it's just a 5 mana artifact that kind of eats up something on the other side, but gives me the ability to start looping or doing cool stuff, upgrading it occasionally. Seems good.
you don't have to make this into a creature ever if you don't want to. So how good would a 5-mana artifact Oblivion Ring be?
Yeah, it'd be fine. It'd be good.
You'd still play it, and this is quite a bit more than that. Like, it gives you a 4/4, like lets you upgrade a 2/2 into a 4/4, lets you switch targets, lets you use your ETBs. So I like A for Mysterious Limousine. I mean, this card's fantastic.
It's a removal spell that you can beat down with. Kind of interesting. Yeah. Rabble Rousing is next. This is the Hideaway 5 for white. This one costs 4 and a white enchantment. Whenever you attack with one or more creatures, create that many 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Then, if you control 10 or more creatures, you can play the exiled card without paying its mana cost.
So this doubles the number of creatures, right, when you attack. And it feeds off itself. So, like, imagine you play this and attack with a creature, now you have a citizen, and they're not attacking either, which is actually, pluses and minuses, but often you don't want your 1/1s to be tapped and attacking, which a lot of these cards do, because they get picked off. So now you play this, attack your 2/2 into their 2/2, you get a 1/1 token. Next turn, if they didn't trade off or there was an open board, you attack with both, get 2 tokens, then you get 4. And so it goes up pretty quickly if they're not stopping you. But even if they are, if you can make, what you can do is you can start attacking with your real creatures and wait till you have 3 or 4 tokens built up that you have not attacked with. And then on one turn attack with all of those tokens plus another creature. You can A, get the hideaway cost and immediately play something, but B, you just start making it where you throw away 2 creatures, but you make 4 and you're just profiting, and it just scales up higher and higher. So in a creature heavy deck, I actually think this is pretty effective.
Yeah. Of course, the easy knock on it, which I think is legit, is if you're behind, it does actually nothing. And you do need at least the ability to get the ball rolling with trade level attacks. But ideally, you would have, a flyer or something that could start generating you these citizen tokens by being able to attack repeatedly. And that doesn't always happen, right? This is a type of card that can make your opponent's removal look really good, right? That you have a decent flyer. Let's say you have an angel, 3/3 flying angel, and you're like, okay, sweet. This is the thing. Then you're like rabble rousing. Now your opponent's like, okay, I'll kill your angel. Right. And now rabble rousing is worse and your angel's dead. And that removal spell looks really, really good. So this is a very conditional card. Like you really do need to be able to get in there with stuff. Combat tricks, evasive creatures, something like that, make this card a lot better. And then it hits that critical mass and you can kind of avalanche your opponent out.
I'm liking Builder on B on this, where if you can really get that creature count up, prioritize cards that make multiple creatures and the other things you mentioned, I think this is a really strong finisher, but there are times when it goes wrong for sure.
Okay. I'm going to say build around C on rabble rousing. I'm less convinced. Last white card is Sanctuary Warden. This is 4 white for a 5/5 flying angel soldier at Mythic. And when it enters it enters the battlefield with 2 shield counters on it. Oh my God. Whenever Sanctuary Warden enters the battlefield or attacks, you may remove a counter from a creature or planeswalker you control. If you do, draw a card and create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. Awesome.
Doesn't get much better than this.
That is fantastic.
A huge bomb. It's really hard for him to kill. You often will want to remove one of its shield counters to immediately get a card in a 1/1. But if you really think that they're stocked up on removal, you can not do that and just be content with your 5/5, or remove a shield counter from like your 2/2 that you don't care about. Yeah,
boy, this is the type of card that really makes me want removal that gets around shield counters. Because, good God, if this thing just gets to stay on the battlefield, like you can't attack through it, it can smash you, and it can generate board presence plus advantage at the same time, and you're just not going to have any way to do. Like, imagine if you're green-red. And somebody plays Sanctuary Warden, like, you might as well just
play any color. I mean, obviously,
at least some of them have the ability to lock it down via an enchantment or to give it -X or whatever. But
yes, there are exile bounce lockdown stuff that does get around
this.
But yes, for the most part, it doesn't. Also, if you're playing against people who have those colors of cards, black, blue, and white are more high on those, then you probably want to remove one of the shield counters right away. And that there's no way for them to really, I guess if they have mana untapped, you play this, the ability triggers, they kill it in response or exile it in response, you can no longer remove a counter from it. So they can't do that. But the ability would actually work if you have a 2/2 with a shield counter and you play this and they kill it in response to the trigger, you can still take the shield counter off the 2/2.
That's funny.
And get the card in the citizen, which is kind of nice. So
and it's just a counter, right? So it could be like a +1/+1 counter from another creature or whatever.
Yeah, could be any counter, though they're obviously sparing on +1/+1 counters in the citizen shield set.
Yes,
to some degree.
But it's mainly that. I think I would actually just go A+ on Sanctuary Warden.
Yeah, I would too. Like, if Sanctuary Warden doesn't get an A+, I feel like A+ is not like that useful of a grade.
I agree.
Because I actually ran into this in my written set reviews where for a while I set the benchmark at like, Grave Titan, Umezawa's Jite sort of things. But it's like, no, Pack Rat is an A++. It's retired. Like, it's in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
I think a good metric is the best 10 cards in the set are usually around an A+ level. And I think this certainly qualifies.
Yeah, I would put it a little like it does to me. It does need to have that extra oomph of that they can't just use a removal spell to kill it and then kill you. If that's the case, then I'm going to give it an A, right? But that isn't the case here. Like, this thing makes a 1/1, draws you a card if you want when it ETBs, and it has shield. So yeah, I like A+ for Sanctuary Warden. Blue is last, but not least. Errant Street Artist. This person's name is Errant. Arant?
That is,
okay.
Yeah, this is the Banksy of of New Capenna.
Blue for a 0/3 legendary human rogue with flash, defender, and haste. I almost don't care what it says after this. If it has that combination, I'm in. 0 power, flash, defender, haste. I gotta know what it does. What was
it gets more bizarre from there.
What was the loot guy that did that?
Bonded Fetch.
Bonded Fetch, man. Like, love that card. All right. 1 and a blue. Tap it. Copy target spell you control that wasn't cast. You may choose new targets. Come on. I was so excited. Like, connive or something, and this is what they did? What, is there an implication here that I need to know about?
Do you get the joke? I can explain the joke to you.
Is it casualty or what are we?
There we go.
Okay.
So, it makes sense in the world of casualty. This copy is a casualty spell, but copy target spell that wasn't cast is like, are you writing the words on this card to like confuse and frustrate Magic players? Because like, I've shown this to a bunch of people like, hey, what do you think about this? And they're like, what the hell? What is this? This makes no sense. That wasn't cast.
Aaron, what else was artist? It? Yeah.
It's a spell.
Right. Okay.
I think they could have, in a world where you really want to do this, copy target spell you control that you didn't pay mana for. Maybe gets you there. But in any case, this is like a build around D, because adding 2 mana to the cost of a casualty spell is no small ask. And a 1 mana 0/3 haste included, not really what you're looking for. So I don't.
They blew it. They had me, and now I'm like, womp D. Yeah. Ledger Shredder is next. This one's 1 and a blue for a 1/3 flying bird advisor at rare. And whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, Ledger Shredder connives. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's not hard for you to do this.
No.
I mean, you're not going to do it every single turn. Even with connive, you're still running out of juice for that. But a 2 mana 1/3 flyer is pretty nice. If you get 1 connive out of this, you're already like, yeah, I'm ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be surprised at how much this restricts their turn.
It will be very awkward for them.
We always talk about double spelling because that's kind of the goal limited, right? From turns 2 through 5, each player plays 1 spell per turn. But if you can break parity and play like a 1-drop plus a 4-drop on turn 5 and double spell, you're ahead of the game. Well, Ledger Shredder, if you play this, now they're like, I don't really want to do that. So,
that's right. And it also, you can do it yourself with like Ledger Shredder, then play a 2-drop. Like, it triggers right away. So, I
mean, you also, you have the information that this card is in your hand. You get to make your decisions accordingly and play a different 2-drop on 2, so that on turn 4, you can play this plus a thing if you want, or you just play this on turn 2 and just have it in play. And either way, it's fine. So I like B+ on Ledger Shredder. It's a solid bit of value.
I'll give it a B. Yeah, good card. Even the score. This card has a mythic rare mana symbol, is an instant, and costs blue, blue, blue X. I'm interested. This spell costs blue, blue, blue less to cast if an opponent has drawn 4 or more cards this turn. Okay. And you draw X cards. Oh man, that is sweet. What a funny card.
Yeah, I don't think the blue less thing is really ever going to happen.
It's never going to happen.
Because for this to happen, first of all, they have to draw 4 cards in a turn, which is, I don't remember the last time someone did that limit. It doesn't really happen.
No.
Second, you have to have left some mana up. I guess, it doesn't cost much at that point. Mostly this is, do you want a 7 mana draw spell? There are some matchups where that's okay. At least this doesn't cost you life, but I'm looking at like a C for this.
Yeah, I think it's a D. I mean,
D is fine too.
Yeah. Is this like a vintage thing? Like if somebody casts Ancestral, then they've drawn 4 that turn? Like if they cast it on their turn?
No, because then you have to still spend 3 mana to draw 3 cards, which isn't even that great of a deal in vintage.
Okay. Reservoir Kraken. This card's sweet. 2 blue for a 6/6 trample ward 2 at rare. 4 mana 6/6 trample ward 2. But at the beginning of each combat, if Reservoir Kraken is untapped, any opponent may tap an untapped creature they control. If they do, tap Reservoir Kraken and create a 1/1 blue fish creature token that can't be blocked.
So this is a kind of a callback to Desecration Demon. Remember they could sack a creature to tap it. Instead of them sacking a creature, they give you a creature.
Yeah, they tap a creature, any creature to tap it down, and then you get a 1/1 fish. So, like you could view it as either way, right? So 4 mana 6/6 trample ward 2, it commands a lot of attention. That's not the type of card that your opponent can ignore. But they can take whatever their worst thing is and basically neutralize your Kraken. But you start building up a little army of 1/1 unblockable fishies, and that gets out of hand pretty quick too. I don't like either option for the opponent. Right? If you start giving me a bunch of fish and I've paid my 4 mana and I get 2 or 3 fish out of it and tap down one of your creatures, that's fine by me. And if you let me have a 6/6 trample on turn 4 with ward 2, well, that's really fine by me too. So the fact that your opponent gets the option to use, a 1/1 random token to keep this Reservoir Kraken at bay does make it worse, but you are building out a relevant board while they're doing so. So I like this card.
Yeah, I think this card's really strong. And I really like that the fail case, right, of them tapping your thing down to attack you, you can just jump with the fish. So
totally. The interesting thing too to note is that it is each combat, which can change things around. For example, they can tap down the Reservoir Kraken on your turn. Like so this is a card you may want to play on your second main phase, right? That doesn't come up very often, but to not give your opponent the chance to tap down one of their good attackers to tap down the Kraken and then be able to untap and attack just into a fish, you may want to second main phase this most of the time. So keep that in mind as well. The ward 2 is kind of insult to injury too. It's just difficult to get rid of too. Go ahead.
Just the fact that it requires them to tap a creature. It's not free to do that either. I mean,
that's right. Totally.
It's like you said, they might have to, if you time it right, they might have to tap an attacker, which further makes this an easy thing to kind of survive when you have in play. I like A for Reservoir Kraken.
I was going to go A-, but I think that either way, this card has a profound effect on the board and really must be dealt with. Next is Undercover Operative. This is 2 blue for a 0/0 Shapeshifter Rogue. I smell a clone. This one's rare. You may have Undercover Operative enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it enters with a shield counter on it if you control that creature. So if you copy one of your things, you get a shield counter. Man, shield counters are a big game. That's sweet. But I'm honestly in for 2 blue clone anyway. Either way.
Yeah, I mean, blue clone is for a while they started making clones your side only, and of course this pays you off for choosing your side, but part of that is just getting a copy of the best creature on the battlefield is just a powerful ability.
It really is, and it ends up being very, very good. Especially, I mean, this is because when you already have the best creature on the battlefield and you play a clone, it usually closes out the game. And this one just adds in another layer to that with the shield counter. And then when you play it on theirs, it usually evens things up. But either scenario is desirable. I like at least B+, and I would trend towards A- for Undercover Operative.
I think it's going to play like an A- because there's a lot of sweet creatures in this set.
Yeah.
And then also just doubling up on yours with a shield counter is pretty sick too.
Yeah. Okay. So A- for Undercover Operative. Wiretapping. This is the blue Hideaway 5. So 4 and a blue enchantment. Whenever you draw your first card during each of your draw steps, draw a card. Then, if you have 9 or more cards in hand, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost.
So this is a hideaway card that I don't think you're gonna see the hideaway cost being happen too often, or the hideaway ability, because 9 cards is a lot. But 5 mana enchantment, draw 2 cards a turn. There are some sets where that's really, really good, and this is shaping up, I think, to be one of those sets.
Yeah, you would look for a triple color gold set for a card like this, where you might get a little bit more time to actually set up. This is matchup dependent. Depends on how good the aggro decks are, how much people dump their hands onto the battlefield in this set. But if there's any stumbles, any slowdowns, any type of mid-range mirror, control mirror, then wiretapping is going to be good. Like that's the type of card that can win the game over the course of time. You just need to be able to be set up to do it. I agree with you about the 9 cards thing. You're almost always better off just playing the cards, casting them and winning the game via that than trying to hold out for some stupid hideaway payoff or whatever. That said, I would give wiretapping, I want to give it like a conditional grade, because there are many formats where this type of card does not perform and ends up being borderline unplayable. But I would start it off at B- because of the gold nature of the set, and kind of work my way from there.
Yeah, I would just go straight up B, I think. But
okay, B for wiretapping. All-Seeing Arbiter. This is 4 blue for a 5/4 flying avatar at Mythic. Whenever All-Seeing Arbiter enters the battlefield or attacks, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. That's really, really good on a 6-drop. Like that's, filtering out lands and getting spells. Whenever you discard a card, target creature an opponent controls gets -X/-0 until your next turn, where X is the number of different mana values among cards in your graveyard. Wow.
They didn't mess around with the dragons in this set. All these big flyers that draw a bunch of cards. Like
I
6 mana 5/4 flying. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, draw 2 and discard a card. I'm like, all right, this is a good card advantage monster. You're up a card, but even better, you're up card selection, because you draw 2 and then discard your worst card. And it happens immediately. So no matter what, you're paid off. And then when it attacks, you're paid off. I'm in. But then the ability of giving a creature -X/-0, which is, even if it's like -3/-0, which isn't that hard to get to, right, that really keeps them off your back, and means when you're in the position where you tap out for All-Seeing Arbiter, shrink one of their creatures, then they kill All-Seeing Arbiter, it's like you gain 3 or 4 life.
Yes.
And how good is a 6 mana 5/4 flyer that gains 4 and draws 2, discard 1, and they had to use a removal on it?
Totally. It's an A. Yeah. Might even be an A+. Like, it is very difficult to die after casting this spell.
I like A on All-Seeing Arbiter. It's very close to A+.
Yeah, it's right in that range.
You're not really passing it,
Amazing. Last blue card is Cut Your Losses. This is 4 blue for a sorcery. It's rare. It has casualty 2, and target player mills half their library rounded down.
This is the card I was referring to, where they have 28 cards. You cut them down to 14, and then you cut them down to 7 because you sacked a 2-drop. Okay, you spent 6 mana and sacked a creature, and now you have 7 turns to kill them. They have 7 turns to kill you. Yeah, that's not. And the thing is, it's not that much better when you play it later. Let's say you waited until 8 turns later, they have 20 cards. Then they go 20, 10, 5. It's not that impressive.
That's not it. Yeah. And anytime you're behind in whatever you're dying, you also potentially hook your opponent up with resources in the graveyard. I would give it an F.
Yeah, I think Cut Your Losses an F. You should cut your losses, not play this card.
Definitely cut your losses. Okay, we've got 3 artifacts and effectively a land to cover here. Our artifacts are Luxior, Giada's Gift. This is 1 mana for a legendary equipment at Mythic Rare, but the equip cost is 3. And then here's a weird sentence, or a weird line of text. Equip Planeswalker is 1. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each counter on it. Equipped permanent isn't a planeswalker and is a creature in addition to its other types. So just an F. Yeah, that's awful. Cool, maybe some neat stuff to do, but not for us. Unlicensed Hearse is next. This is 2 mana for a star vehicle at rare. It has the ability tap, exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard, and unlicensed hearse's power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards exiled with it, and it has a crew cost of 2.
This card's fantastic.
Is it good?
Oh, yeah. So, like, yes, you don't want to play this on turn 2. It's not really going to have anything to exile. But imagine you play this on turn 6, right, alongside your 4-drop.
Mm-hmm.
You exile 2 cards in the graveyard. Next turn, you exile 2 more. Now you have a 4/4 crew 2, but it just grows by 2 a turn until the graveyards all run out of cards. And then you have like probably like a crew 2 7/7 or 8/8 in most games. I mean, cards just do go to the graveyard. There's even a cycle of lands that put themselves in the graveyard. Yes. Actually, both the cycles of lands at common. Yes. In fact, also the rare land, they all put themselves in the graveyard somehow.
Yes, they
do. Creatures trade, spells get cast, connive happens. When you have a 10/10 crew 2, like, yeah, it takes a little while to get there. You only spent 2 mana on this. It's just not asking that much of you. And it just messes up the black decks that are trying to get 5 costs or use raised deads.
At what point is it 4/4 the threshold?
Yeah, at 4/4 you feel like a 2 mana 4/4 crew 2 vehicle is a card I think you would, reasonably put in your deck, but not feel like super excited about. But you'd play a decent amount of the time.
But then 6/6 is business.
Yes, a 6/6 is just like really far out there in terms of, especially for 2 mana.
Okay. What would you give it? This card's very difficult to grade in my mind. Are you thinking B?
I think it's a B. Yeah.
Okay. I want to play it.
I mean, just a good card.
Last artifact is called Getaway Car. It's 3 mana for a 4/3 artifact vehicle at rare. It's got haste and crew 1. And whenever Getaway Car attacks or blocks, return up to 1 target creature that crewed it this turn to its owner's hand. So you have to bounce it?
Well, you don't have to.
Oh,
it's up to 1. So what this is, it's a 3 mana 4/3 haste crew 1 vehicle, which aggro decks are definitely in for.
Yep, definitely.
Like that's just, you remember a runaway freighter or whatever.
Yeah.
And then what it does let you do is it's not like something you can do in response, so you can't like save them from remove your creature from removal, but it lets you re-trigger ETBs at a pretty good rate.
Okay.
So I mostly am going to play this as the stats. I think it's fine, but it's not it's a card that can kind of get you there if you want ETBs. Imagine like turn 2 Corrupt Court Official. I use that one a lot because it's so cheap. Turn 3 Getaway Car, crew, attack for 4, bounce the Court Official.
Yikes.
Like, that's a start, right?
That is a start. Okay. Yeah, I like it. Give it a B? Is it a B minus? Is it a C plus?
I think it's like C plus B minus. Good with Alliance too. Like if you want to re-trigger your Alliance creatures, it can be pretty good.
Yeah. C plus B minus for Getaway Car. And then last card is actually 5. It's a full cycle, but these are the tri-lands that also cycle. So I'm going to read Rafine's Tower, which is the one for Obscura. So this is a land that counts as a plains, island, and swamp. It's rare. All of these are. And they enter the battlefield tapped, and you can cycle them for 3 mana. So you can pay 3 mana, discard them to draw a card, and then, of course, they tap for one of their 3 colors. So in this case, it taps for white, blue, or black. And there's one for each of the families. These cards are awesome. These cards really like perform a lot better than you think that they might. We're actually pretty big advocates for taking lands in lieu of really powerful stuff to make sure that your mana is good. And these are like the top tier for that.
These, if you draft Shards of Alara is not going to be exactly the same because the mana fixing was terrible, but you would first pick the tri-lands routinely.
Yes.
Cons was a little bit less than that because they had, like this set, like New Capenna, lots of common fixers, but you still first pick the tri-lands a lot in those sets.
Mm-hmm.
This adds cycling to it, and so it's more like Ikoria where it's like, oh yeah, these are just like close to bombs, not like I wouldn't take this over, one of the like lieutenants or whatever, right. If you had both in the same pack. These are rare, so that makes it less likely, but I'm probably going to take this over like Rafine's Tower, pick 1, pack 1 over basically any common. Like maybe Inspiring Overseer is going to put me to the test because that card's ridiculous. But in general, you should look at when you open one of these tri-lands in your rare slot, you're like, ooh, this is great. I'm really happy.
This is something. Yeah. I mean, I take these at a B level just for reference.
Yeah. I think they're about B plus level, which is very high.
Which is very, very high. They solve a lot of problems and they give you effectively no downside in doing so. And I'll mention this once again. We've talked about this and we talk about the lands a lot, but in modern era limited sets, getting enough playables is not an issue. It hasn't been for years. That's not something that you ever really fight unless you've got a complete disaster on your hands. And that opens up the door to prioritize cards like this, still knowing I'm going to be fine on playables. Now I can actually cast all my cards. So that's why you want to do that. Okay. So there we go. There is the Rare and Mythic Rare review. It did not disappoint. They definitely brought the heat and some really cool, interesting stuff to explore there too. Now we just got to get this this set online, and we will be jumping right in. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find everything related to the podcast at lrcast.com. That includes all the old episodes of the show and links to all of our stuff, our streams, and where you can find our content and all that kind of stuff. We want to thank our sponsors, channelfireball.com. If you're looking to pre-order Streets of New Capenna, head on over to Channel Fireball and get your order in there. Also FTX, if you want to explore the space of managing your digital assets, FTX is the safe, regulated place to go to it. FTX.us within the US and FTX.com outside of it. Thanks so much for hanging out. We'll have our format overview next week.
So Marshall, what are your thoughts on vibe checks?
What is a vibe check again?
Well, a vibe is just the general, like, kind of what's the atmosphere like? What's the attitude like? Like sometimes, you, like, for example, you've had really good dinners, right? You go there with like sometimes you go with like the peak dinner experience in my mind is 4 to 6 people. You go with a 4 to 6 person dinner to a nice restaurant. You got a table where everyone's equally situated. So no one's like kind of like a weird shaped table where someone's kind of on their own. Yeah. And they're all like, S tier people. They're all like on your high S tier people. The vibe there, excellent. Can't be better. Right. Uh-huh. Whereas like, imagine a 12 person dinner. You had to wait 45 minutes at the Cheesecake Factory. The table's structured so that you can't really talk to people who aren't right next to you. And like, it's like, half your friends, but the other half are like kind of hangers on or people you didn't really know that well. Like, think of like the kind of loose GP crew where you just like attracted some like more and more people as you walked out the door. Like the vibe there, pretty poor, right? Definitely. That's a really good description, by the way. So I had a place that failed the vibe check today, which was our dog, Julie. Her groomer opened a new business, a bigger place, a much bigger place, half an hour away. Well, easy decision. We got to find a new groomer. I'm not driving half an hour for that, right? Like there's tons of dog groomers. It's important. We went with the same person for like 3 years because, I want the dog to be treated well and she liked the place and they did a good job. Yeah. But half an hour, I mean, that's a beating. Like that's tough. She's spoken like a true, like, I guess Colorado. That's not that far. Like, what? Half an hour of a drive? It went from literally a 3-minute drive to a 30-minute drive, what, 10 times worse? Okay, that is a lot worse, but I there's like nowhere in Seattle I can drive to. It doesn't take that long. I don't know. Anyway. Don't you have a million places you can walk to? Oh, I do, yeah. But yes. In any case. Uh-huh. So you're looking for a new dog groomer. So we found a new place, and this is the first time we went in, and they just the vibe check they rolled a they were critical failure, rolled a 1. It wasn't a stone 1 because I wouldn't have left the dog there if it was, but it was like there was lots of dogs in there, there was lots of people in there. They took my information, they took out an index card and wrote my information, put it back in a folder, and I'm like, that you don't like they're not using a computer for this? Like what's going on? Like I'm really confused. Like they didn't like they're like, oh, they couldn't find my appointment. Like they're like, okay, just write down your information here. We'll take her now. And then it took like an hour and a half, which kind of on the long side, right? And overall, I'm like, nah, this ain't gonna do it. So we're gonna find a new place. And kind of my point is like, alarm bells didn't go off where I again wasn't comfortable leaving the dog there, and she was groomed fine. She looks fine. She seemed okay. It's obviously the dog can't really tell you what happened, but vibe checks are really important. Like when you're trying to figure out whether you want to work at a place, whether you want to date someone, whether you want to buy a house when you go tour it or rent an apartment. Honestly, I firmly believe within the first 30 seconds, you know the answers to almost all these questions.
Do you trust that in yourself? Like, do you pay attention to that?
Oh, I'm like a convert. I've talked many times on the podcast or a stream about how much I just shoot from the hip.
Yeah.
And part of that is I believe that my subconscious is very good at identifying things. And I trust it at this point because I've spent a lot of time like working on it. So when something doesn't pass the vibe check for me, like I'm just off it. Like I'm out of there, and sometimes, I don't know, you go to a party and like, this is, now that, us in our advanced age, not going to get in the situation too much, but imagine, you go to a party, like you're in college, you go to a party and just like, wow, the vibe here, it ain't good. Often that's just like a signal especially to people who are highly attuned to just get out of there. And like,
interesting.
It's not even just that it's not fun. Maybe it's dangerous, or maybe it's
there's
just,
stuff going on there that you don't want to be
happen.
involved in. Yeah.
And the same is true. Like, I firmly believe that you should not have to convince yourself, especially on big decisions. Look, if I'm deciding where to buy a sandwich, I'm not going to worry too much. A sandwich is a sandwich. The low end of sandwich is still pretty good,
Mm-hmm.
But when you're like looking to rent a place and you walk in and you don't like it right away, you got to think pretty hard. Like, why am I trying to convince myself to rent this place?
Yeah.
There's lots of apartments. Like, yes, maybe you might not have an option and you need to rent something right away, in which case, hey, your standards got to be lower. But take it even a step further. Like, what if you're like buying a place or buying a car or making like a big decision?
Right.
If you're not like, if you're not getting all green flags, like, you should not have to have that internal monologue where you are convincing yourself to do something. There's always going to be more options. And it does not take very long. It takes, like I said, I'm not even joking. Like, it's 30 seconds. Like, if you walk into a new place and within 30 seconds, you're like, wow, this is amazing. You shouldn't be like, all right, let me try to find reasons to like this. Like, that's just not how it should work. And a good example of this from Blink, which again, I know Malcolm Gladwell's kind of pseudoscience, but like, I've found enough of the examples to actually line up with reality in my life that I do believe it, especially when it comes to like playing Magic, for example. They took experts at Greek statues, and within 30 seconds, they could usually tell that something was wrong because like they know all the like tiny little things that add up to their subconscious feeling like,
Totally. Dude, I can do that with watches.
Yeah. I'm sure
I know you can do it with Magic cards too, right? Where like, you're like, something's off about this. Like, I don't know what, but it's like, there's
really
something
easy
that
to
doesn't
identify a fake card. An experienced dealer, like Magic dealer, you could show them a really good fake. They would be like, this isn't a real card.
Yes.
And then you'd ask them why. They'd be like, all right, let me see if I can give you reasons. But they already know.
But they know.
They're not trying to. And so there's a couple of things here. One is, as always, I've hammered home, trust your subconscious. But the other is like, don't try to convince yourself in situations where you don't need to be convinced. Like, so sometimes you do, like when it's like studying for a test or going to the gym or something, like maybe you have to fight your own instincts. I don't want to do this kind of unpleasant thing, or I don't like this. But when it's like making these huge decisions, like if all signs don't point to yes, like you should be looking for reasons not to do these things, not reasons to do these things.